Test, test, test. Test, test.
Okay, I'm going to change mics again. My mic's not working. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Laverne Lewis, TriMet's board president. Welcome to TriMet meeting today, December 11th, 2024. It's our last meeting of the year. We are here at One Main Place for our board meeting, and we are also live streaming our meeting on YouTube. All members of our board are here except Director Wade, and we also have Director Frisbee who will be joining us live on Zoom. Thank you for being with us today. We'll begin this morning with our public forum for those who are present and have signed up to testify. Members of the public who wish to provide testimony but could not be here may join virtually after we, excuse me one sec. Okay. I'll just reach over. Musical mics this morning. Okay, so for those who are offering testimony, please direct your comments to TriMet and our transit-related services rather than other topics. We also ask that comments be limited to the 3 minutes, and you will note that there will be a time indicator to help you comply with that, and we ask that you please do respect the time so that others can have their 3 minutes. If you are unable to limit your comments to 3 minutes, you may provide your comments in writing, and then staff will be happy to take those and disseminate them with the board. I will call to the testimony table the first 2 individuals for testimony. The first is Doug Allen. Please come on up. And Darla Sturdy. Welcome. Thank you.
Do I need to activate this mic? Green button, I'm colorblind. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, President Lewis, Vice President Kim, and directors. My name is Doug Allen. I'm the Portland Area Vice President of AORTA, Association of Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates. This morning, I just want to thank TriMet and the City of Portland for working together to spend some Portland Clean Energy Fund money on next-gen transit signal priority at a variety of bottlenecks. And take a moment to remind folks, what your planners are well aware of, that improved speed is just one tool, along with increased frequency, coverage, and span of service, to allow customers to make trips within reasonable times when and where they want to travel, which will be a big factor in increasing ridership. Thank you very much.
Just checking. Good morning. My name is Darla Sturdy, and it's been a while since I've been here for the board, but I've been doing safety with TriMet mainly for about the last 21 years. So I lost my son June 23rd, 2003. He was killed on a crosswalk by light rail in Gresham. So in 2007, I went to legislation to make a difference because that was the only way I could do it. So I passed a law, Senate Bill 829, that changed 80 crosswalks and 25 stations. Now, 5 years, or actually in 1999, they'd already done a study and already knew they should have changed these. Okay. Then in 2019, I went back because I found out that TriMet judges their own accidents. Well, So again, I wanted to make sure to make a difference. So I put together a board of around 17 people, and it's an advisory board, and they get together every 6 months. So the reason that I passed the first law, I just want to kind of throw this in there, is because they'd already done a study. The second law is because I found out a time where TriMet turned into the federal government that they didn't kill any people in a year, and they actually killed 2. So one of the reasons I'm here today is you hear the news, and all of a sudden, you kill 2 people on a weekend. All of a sudden, you have 2 boys that got in a crash along 84 and went over a barrier of about 3 feet. We need to be proactive. And proactive means you know that people might go on there and trespass. Just having a trespass sign doesn't do it. So they actually went to get something off their car. Both got killed. But there's a professionalism. That's the driver of the trains. And really, in any crash, if you look throughout the United States, the driver of the train is the responsibility one. And they say that the train can't stop. Well, the train's got sand. It drops. They can actually stop on a dime. Some of the things, I know I only have 3 minutes, but I would like to know for the list that I put together, the 80 crosswalks and 45 stations, are they done? Because in 2019, I found out that a lady got hit in 2015, lost her leg, her spleen, and it was one that TriMet said they'd fix in 2010 and again in 2014. And they hadn't done it, so it happened again, and they fixed it a week later. So I want to have dates and times of those. I'll just make it really quick. I'd like to get together with the board. I did find out that you and I can meet for coffee, which is great, but I really like to be proactive. 21 years, and I'm trying to make it safe for other people. And one reason I'm here today is I can't do it by myself. I can't always be the one that goes past the law, and I have to turn back and check to see how you're doing, because it's been forgotten or it's about money. But is it about money? It's about people and their lives.
Thank you. Thank you, Darla Sturdy, and thank you, Doug. Our next 2 testimony individuals is Gertrude Lynch and Dorothy Von Eggers. And remember, if you have written testimony, please share that with staff, and that will come to the board. Okay.
Should I go?
We're waiting for the other lady to come forward.
Go ahead.
You're fine.
Good morning, Dr. Lewis. I'm so happy to be here this morning. This is the first meeting I've been to for a TriMet board meeting, but I'm so happy to be here this morning to share my information that I have for you folks this morning. I'm real pleased at what I've been hearing, and I want to share some things with you about. I recently moved to Southeast Portland last year from Northwest Portland. I lived in Northwest Portland for 13 years approximately, and I worked in Northwest Portland for 20-some-odd years. Anyway, I'm a retired healthcare worker. But I have this to say, I moved to Southeast Portland last year, and the bus system has not been great there for people that have disabilities. I use a walker. I have a disability. And there's some neighbors that have power chairs, you know, when they need to go places and get on the bus. And the 72 line bus has not been good. It's always overcrowded. And I'm hoping that TriMet one day will get a larger bus to be put on a line like a FX, like they have on the number 4 line, FX2 or whatever that line is. Anyway, I'm hoping they can do that soon, because this really packed. The bus is always packed. And then what happens is the disabled people are left on the street when they don't have room for them to put them in the disabled section of the bus to be seated. And I've noticed there's some issues been going on. There's been people that I'm a retired healthcare worker that are known drug users. They get on the 72, don't pay any fare, just walk on casually and have a seat in the disabled section. They're passed out. And that's a problem for folks that want to get on, that have a power chair or a walker or a cane. They don't have where to sit because these people are laying in the front part of the bus, in the disabled section. Also, people have been dragging these really large wagons on that you probably see them in town where they drag their groceries in or whatnot. It's just been a problematic issue on TriMet recently since I moved over in that area. And it's very concerning that they are able to walk on the bus without paying any fare at all. And I do not see any fare inspectors getting on to ask these people where their fare are. And this happens on a weekly basis. And I've noticed that there's been people at the bus stops, just neighbors of mine that go to work anymore. And I'm retired, I don't work anymore, but these are people that go to work to their jobs more. And they're having to stand at the 72 stop near 82nd and Foster when there are people standing there smoking fentanyl and open drugs, right and open, the broad daylight, with no accountability for any TriMet security or whoever else, police officers that need to come in and intervene in this situation. This has been an ongoing problem for quite some time in that area. We also have a large homeless population over in that area also. At the bottom of my street, I live in between 86 and Foster, southeast. And what I'm trying to say, dear, is that make everything better. I hope that TriMet can look in this situation about the disabled people being left on the street because there's not room in the bus for them, but due to the fact that you got these kind of folks getting on there, laying in the front seat of the bus on the disabled section of people for the disabled folks. So I'm hoping that someone in the future can look into this for me. I would really appreciate that. I'm just all about advocating for disabled people. That's what I did for my patients when I did my healthcare work. Advocation is the best thing in the world. To advocate for people that don't have, that aren't able to speak. You can be the voice for those folks that aren't able to speak. And that's all I have to say. And everybody, I want to thank all of you for giving me the time to speak this morning. I really appreciate everyone that's here. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Hi. Okay, so I'm here today to discuss the 96 bus and the implementation of the 96 changes that are coming up in June of 2025. This is my fourth board meeting visit, and one of the reasons of the urgency is because that implementation is going to be happening in 6 months, and it was last June that I was here, and that 6 months since last June has just flown by. So I know the next 6 months are going to fly by real quick. So I've got my thing I want to read. In March of this year, dear President Lewis, board directors, and TriMet managers, in March of this year, I attended the board meeting where, prior to approval, Ordinance 377 was being discussed, which included the proposed 96 bus route change. We discussed the unfavorable feedback, received hundreds of comments that came through online. Let me stop for a second because I forgot something. I'm so sorry. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to recap where we were, where we're at, and where we're going. Okay, so we discussed the unfavorable feedback received from hundreds of comments that came through online, email, social media, and traditional customer service channels, including phone and text, as well as direct conversations with writers at open house meetings. At this meeting, President Gonzalez stated there was an opportunity, keyword, to be responsive to that feedback, and he directed Mr. Tom Mills, Director of Mobility Planning and Policy, to provide an update and further information. Upon passage of Ordinance 377 at the April 2024 board meeting, it was determined that TriMet would make good on that opportunity by giving Bus 96 another year for ridership to increase in order to justify any modifications. At the June 2024 board meeting, I asked what metrics were being used to define such increase. What is the numeric base you're starting at? And in July, I received a written response from Alan Leto, Senior Director Planning, on behalf of General Manager Mr. Sam DeSue Jr., stating any decisions for a revision to the approved ordinance would be based on an increase/decrease happening to the system as a whole, in addition to pier lines in the southwest area. In September, I've got 3 paragraphs left. I got 22 seconds, so hopefully you let me continue. In September, I reached out to Dr. Kellogg, sorry. I reached out to Director Kellogg for some clarification on how this makes sense for 96. We're comparing apples to oranges. Then he brought up a trend report he did for spring 2024, which showed line 96 at 8.9 rides per vehicle hour. That's when I noticed there was a flaw in the averages. That's because you're averaging total 96 riders between all of its 44 buses, 22 that come into downtown from Tualatin, 22 that come from Tualatin to downtown. And the majority of riders are only using the buses during the AM and PM rush hour. So I suggested we pivot and we just look at rush hour numbers only for maintaining a rush hour only I-5 express line. In October, Director Kellogg spoke with Mr. Leto about these concerns, who said he would look into the passenger count for each run. He said Mr. Leto did not make any promises, but seemed to be open to continuing busier runs on I-5 while transferring the less busy runs to the proposed route for line 96 and assigning those runs a new line number. Last paragraph. I just want you to all to know I am thrilled with this possibility. I am confident that with more private companies having a January 2025 and prior return to office mandate, i.e. Amazon, Walmart, Dell, Zoom, Starbucks, and likely more of the federal workforce, we will see that the new rush hour averages are comparable to other buses that have increased their frequency and will thus justify an end result that will work for all of us. As one who is boots on the ground, I ride the bus. I'll be doing my own passenger count for 2 hours during the AM rush hour next month, and will be happy to update you all on the numbers that I record. Thank you. And who can I give this to, please?
That will go to,
Okay.
yes, to staff.
Okay.
Thank you, Gertrude and Dorothy.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you so
Thank you
much,
very
Dr.
much.
Lewis. I appreciate you giving me the time.
At this time, we'll call Crystal Kindle. Crystal? Welcome.
Good morning to all. I appreciate your time this morning. My name is Krista Kendall. I am the Executive Director at Bonaventure of Milwaukee. We are in construction right now on the corner of Rusk Road and the Milwaukee Expressway, otherwise known as Highway 224. It's going to be a 170-unit senior living community. Directly to the right-hand side of our community, down Kellogg Creek Drive, is the Milwaukee Community Center, which I am on the board of directors for. The Milwaukee Community Center, just over a year ago, transitioned from a senior center to a community center, with the influx of programs coming to the community center, which is in the same parking lot as North Clackamas Park, in addition to the many seniors moving into my community and 60 to 70 employees at any given time. We are requesting that the route that was deleted from North Clackamas Park be reinstated on the bus. That is it. We very much appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Are there any other testimonies? There's none that are virtual? Okay. With no other members of the public coming forward at this time, this will close our public forum. Thank you to those who came forward today. We greatly appreciate hearing from you. Okay, with that, I will open up the formal business meeting for TriMet. We will now proceed to our board reports section of our business meeting. I will begin by asking Director Graham to present a report from the recent committee meeting on the Committee on Accessible Transportation, also known as CAT. Director Graham?
Thank you so much. Good morning. I was really pleased to attend my first CAT meeting as the director and to meet the group, which is an incredibly passionate, very thoughtful group. And the first meeting, John Gardner, the Chief Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Director, gave a very thorough presentation on Title VI and TriMet's Title VI plan, talking about all the different dimensions of accessibility that TriMet considers in formulating its plans. We also talked a lot about language accessibility, which we spoke about in the previous board meeting as well across the system and how that's being considered with online tools and how that will be rolled out over time. We also talked about IRA, which is a system that TriMet has been experimenting with for people who are low sight and working on how that could be integrated with the system and navigating the system overall. So I look forward to working with the CAT more on that because we have also been doing some experimentation with that as well. And I had to leave the meeting a bit early because it unfortunately overlapped with my board onboarding training. So I went from that meeting to another meeting, but Eileen, I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add. No, that's it? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Graham. Excellent. Are there any questions from any of our directors for Director Graham? Okay. Hearing none, we'll now ask Director Flowers to present the Metro Policy Advisory Committee report, also known as MPAC. Director Flowers.
Thank you so much, President Lewis. So I also had the privilege of attending my first MPAC meeting. A great deal of it was onboarding related, or so it felt. The one item that felt TriMet adjacent or directly related to our work was the discussion of the exploratory shuttle service that we've been running across various parts of the city. It was TriMet staff actually briefing MPAC and receiving input from our regional partners on the continued expansion of our system and the study necessary to make sure that we do so in a thoughtful way. So no major updates on this end to anything that overlaps directly with our business.
Thank you, Director Flowers. Are there any questions for Director Flowers? Everyone's a doctor today. Okay. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to Director Frisbee, who is virtual there. I'd like to invite you to provide a update committee report from TIAC, which is the Transit Equity Advisory Committee.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry not to be with you in person today, but you all look great on the screen. We had our TIAC meeting last night, so I want to give kudos to the staff, many of whom were managing that meeting until 7 o'clock last night and are, I know, in the boardroom today. So thank you all for your commitment and service to our region. TIAC had a good meeting. We had a series of TriMet updates on various projects, many of which are included in the board update today, so I won't go over those. We heard great updates from our partners about what they were working on, and I would say some common themes we heard related to TriMet's work are folks working on safety issues, road safety and access issues, particularly when they have a TriMet bus stop near or close to their facility. They're trying to help folks be able to access it and get to it. And lots of partners also preparing for the 2025 legislative session and the possible transportation package. John Gardner presented on the Fair Subsidy Research Update, which will be coming to the work group early in January, which is very exciting. We also had a brief update on the FX plan, which we are all, I know, very excited about as it moves forward. And of key importance, I think, for TIAC, we also talked about the language access plan update and the work we're doing there, and are really asking TIAC members to engage and also help put out the survey and the information there to get that to their members. Really appreciated Miles and Lindsay came and gave a legislative plan update focused on the 2025 session. That was really helpful for our members to hear TriMet's focus on increasing funding to be able to reach our 2030 goals and improve service and operations, as well as other policy changes that we're pursuing to try to keep our riders coming back and get more riders on board. Of note for everyone in the room or everyone listening in, we are recruiting for new TIAC members starting in the new year. So if you are interested, the application is up on the TriMet website and out on our social media work starting, I think, in next week. I can't see John Gardner's face, so if I am off on the date, he will correct me as soon as I am done speaking. That was our TIAC meeting for December, and the group will rejoin in the first quarter of the new year.
Thank you, Director Frisbee. Just like to add, if anyone in our audience interested in joining TIAC, please talk with Executive Director Garner. That is he's raised his hand there. It is an excellent committee, and I encourage everyone to seek out and join. Any questions for Director Frisbee? And I did promise her that she would stand on the screen and show off her ugly sweater. Aha, there we go. Well, okay, I take that back. It's now branded with the bus. It's not an ugly Christmas sweater.
It's borderline, I'm not going to lie, but I encourage everyone to support TriMet merch. Support your favorite transit
We
agency.
love
and
our
TriMet.
swag. Thank you. Okay, moving to our next committee report from the Transit Equity Advisor. Nope. Take that back. Crash Advisory Committee with Director Kellogg.
Thank you, Director Lewis. The Crash Committee met on November 22nd. I was unable to attend. I was literally on the other side of the world and 14 hours behind. I did, however, watch the video of the meeting and watch video of all the crashes, of which there were 6. A lot of times the committee, when we review its vehicle collisions with other vehicles, for whatever reason, this one was specifically contact of our vehicles with human beings. And in 2 cases, we had trespassers on our right-of-way. One of the cases you mentioned, Ms. Sturdy, we reviewed that and really dove into what more could the driver of the train had done. And the video clearly shows braking well before the point of impact, but they were traveling at a high rate of speed, and the 2 individuals were in the middle of the right-of-way in a place where they shouldn't have been. Other instances, even more heartbreaking, were people trying to self-harm in front of our vehicles, literally laying down on the tracks as the train approached. So these are not easy videos to watch, but we analyzed each one of them as to what more could TriMet have done to prevent, these kind of collisions, we'll call them. So I want to thank the members of the staff who gave that very thorough analysis, all the information we needed, and the members of the committee who really dove in to the crashes. One item I want to mention, another one of the crashes involved a bus hitting a tree, and head-on collision, very significant. And what I saw with the video on the bus was the people who are in the seats, some of them were ejected 2 or 3 rows forward out of their seats. And this crash was maybe 30, 35 miles an hour. And so I've asked staff and Andrew and some others to say, is there something more we can do from an economic standpoint to protect the passengers on the bus when there is a collision like this? Because if it would have been at a higher speed, I don't even want to think about what the consequences of it might have been. And my own thoughts turn to, Dr. Lewis, you may appreciate this, but when I grew up, and I'm sure when you grew up, there were no seat belts in the back seats of cars. I would fly around in the back seat, and we got wise to that, right? Those are now required in the back seat. And I don't know what the reason why there aren't seat belts available on public transit, especially buses. But again, if it makes sense, I think it would be a great improvement for us. So I apologize for the long-winded report, but that was the crash committee.
Thank you very much, Director Kellogg. Were there any questions, comments for Director Kellogg? Okay, hearing none at this time. We'll move to our last committee report from Director Kim for Finance and the Audit Committee, also known as the F&A Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Finance and Audit Committee met this morning. We reviewed the two forthcoming resolutions amending the 401A defined contribution plans, both the union and the non-union plans. The resolution will align the union defined contribution plan with the working wage agreement that was adopted back in September. The working wage agreement increased TriMet's contribution from 8 to 9% on September 15, 2024, and then will increase again to 10% on December 1st of 2027. The working wage agreement also included language setting a default employee contribution at 5% if the employee does not make an election to contribution between 0 to 15%. And so the resolutions will update the union and non-union plans for the default 5% employee contribution if the employee does not make an election between 0 to 15% within the employee's first 60 days of employment to contribute to their retirement account. To be sure, the employee's election to contribute to their 401A account is just, it is a one-time irrevocable election, which is a rule set by the IRS, not by TriMet. And the resolutions that are forthcoming later today are also clarifying languages for when the employee participates or is enrolled into the plan. And we'll cover more on these two resolutions. In fact, the first two resolutions that are up today. Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you, Director Kim. Are there any questions for Director Kim? Okay, hearing none, that concludes our committee reports. I'd just like to thank all of the members of our communities that put time and energy and their own passion into our committees, along with the directors who lead, participate, and advocate for the work of the committees. It is beyond the attending board meetings, but it's very vital work that we have a way for our communities to engage in TriMet's work. It's real important. All right, at this time, I will turn to our general manager for his monthly report. If you have any questions on committee reports, if not, report.
Well, first of all, good morning, President Lewis, members of the board, our community partners, thank you for being here, and the public, thank you. I want to state also, want to thank the public for coming and testifying. I can let you know that staff will be following up with you. Ms. Sturdy, I'll definitely be sitting down with you and having a conversation as well. I do want to say that safety is our highest core value, and I truly believe in it, 100%, leading this organization. In my report this morning, I will provide timely information on a number of topics. I will introduce you to our newest member of the executive leadership team, that's Claire Corey. I'll provide an update on ridership, including highlighting some of the bright spots from our recent bus improvements. Alan Lato will provide you with an update on our TriMet business plan. And then you'll hear from the representatives of Ide Bailey with the results of our latest financial audit of TriMet. And then we will reflect on the dedication and the recent opening of our new Transit Mobility Center. We'll take a look at 2024 year-end video. Just wait until you see what we've accomplished this year here. And then I'll end with the 2024 Transit App Choice Awards. So I'll start here. I want to bring Claire Corey up. You just come on and join us here for a moment. Claire just started with us 2 weeks ago, and she's going to play a very critical role at TriMet. She is our first ever Chief Strategy and Planning Officer, and this position will provide executive level leadership and oversight to TriMet's engineering and construction, our public affairs division, as well as to our planning department and our Vision 2030 initiative. One of Claire's essential duties is identifying and implementing agency-wide initiatives that will help us better serve our riders and the region for the next 50 years. So she has a big task ahead of us. Claire also comes from Sound Transit in Seattle, where she worked since 2018. But I want to let her know, just as everyone else, now she's a TriMetian as we move forward. So, Claire, we're very happy to see you, and we're happy that you're here with us. So please share a bit with the board and say a few words about your background and who you are.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, President Lewis. Good morning, board members. Very happy to be here, very excited. As Sam said, I come from Sound Transit. A little bit about my background. I've got a background in strategy, really state level politics and policy and project management and change management. So most recently, I was at Sound Transit for the last 7 years. I came up, as I like to say, on the operations side of the house as the chief of staff to the executive director. Learned a ton. I had the chance to lead negotiations while I was there. We have IGAs in place for all of our modal service, so it was a great way to learn and get up to speed. But I had the chance to lead those negotiations when we entered into them for our light rail with King County Metro, and on the bus side with our 3 partners there, King County Metro, Pierce Transit, Community Transit. So a great experience. And then the last 4 years at Sound Transit, I was over on the other side of the house, as we kind of say, in the Portfolio Services Office. It was a new department that was created at Sound Transit. As you can imagine, they've got a $145 billion build out they're doing over the course of the next few decades. And so we're really trying to work better together at Sound Transit. And so that's when you usually send in Claire Corey, it seems. Because I'm an olive branch person, I'm a collaborator. And so my job there was to break down silos, get people working better together, think through our processes, and make sure we are as efficient as possible, which is something I take seriously as a public servant. So great experience there. Happy to apply that to all my opportunities here. And then background, state level politics and policy. I came up there in the Michigan Senate, getting to do about anything under the sun there in that capacity. And then for my last 8 years in Michigan, I worked for the governor. And I say that was a life-changing experience because I got to work on every topic under the sun. I also got to lead good government for the governor, and that was really, again, changing culture, breaking down silos, getting folks to work better together, empowering our employees with tools and training and resources, and then I got to lead performance management too for him. So that's where I learned my data-driven decision-making that I take very seriously in setting goals and measures and then working hard to attain those. So very excited to be here at TriMet. It has been an incredibly warm welcome ever since I came down, even looking for housing, just all the people that you meet on the street and the restaurants and the coffee shops. It's just everybody has been so helpful, so kind. And so I'm here, I'm ready to get to work. I've already had a really big week just learning, and so just ready to hit the ground running to the best of my ability to work beside all of you.
Any questions, comments, welcomes? Well, welcome.
Thank you.
for being part of the TriMet family, and we're happy that you're here, Claire.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and I'd also like to say, not only welcome, but we're so lucky to have you here in the city of Portland and the Portland metro region. You know, as we think about the future of transit and the future expansion of this region over the course of the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we really have a generational opportunity to shape the way this place will be experienced by children, by folks who have difficulty getting around, by our elderly family members, neighbors, and friends. And your work is going to be so critical in making sure that we do so in the most thoughtful and intentional way possible, while also maintaining our positioning as an agency that situates itself at the forefront of innovation on a national and international level. So couldn't be more excited to have you here and to work alongside you moving forward.
Claire, thank you, and welcome aboard. Yeah. So now let's turn to ridership. The board meeting is early this month, and the data for November is still being processed as we move forward. But let's take a look at October. TriMet provided 6.1 million trips for the month. That's a 7.4% increase, or about 95,000 more weekly rides over October of 2023. We continue to receive positive feedback from the East County communities right now on service improvements that was made in the recent months. So from Mount Hood Community College to Reynolds High School, they're quite happy with the extension of line 25 that was completed in August, and the ridership gains have been significant, up to 5 times year to year on that line, from about 700 weekly trips to nearly 3,800 weekly trips that are being produced. Also on our line 40, we launched as a new line in August, and we're seeing about 5,000 weekly trips that are taking place there. We're already hearing praise also from our business community about improvements that were made to line 81 in early December, and that line serves Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park. It's a significant job center, and our December service change added weekend service to that line as well. One of the big employers, FedEx, they tell us that they're thrilled with the new service, and with the holiday seasons here, it couldn't have come at a more better time for them. Amazon also has a facility at that industrial park, so we're getting folks to work out there, and all of this come through our Forward Together service concept, which is designed to do just that. So I want to turn now to the business plan, our TriMet business plan. This plan guides our efforts to fulfill our mission, connect people with transit that is safe, convenient, reliable, accessible, and welcoming. The business plan includes a 5-year outlook and is ever evolving as we move forward with Vision 2030. So Alan Leto, if you could make your way up. He is our Senior Director of Planning, and he has an update on the latest development. So Alan, over to you.
Great, thank you. Excuse me, President Lewis and directors. Just a quick update on the business plan. Those of you who have been here for a year or more know that we do an annual cycle update of the business plan. The business plan is a 5-year update to our strategic thinking about what we're doing to improve the agency, to support Vision 2030, and make progress going forward. So if you go to the next slide. Can you click through this and see if this has more content to it? Yeah, let's go with this. The other one's prettier, but this one has better content. So the 5 pillars that you're aware of from the Vision 2030, this is how we've reorganized the business plan last year. So the current FY25 business plan is aligned along the pillars of ridership, community, people, infrastructure, and resources. And then there are focus areas within each one, and those help provide sort of structure for how we think about the efforts that we're making on these. And this continues to be our guidance for going into 2026, where Vision 2030 will be exactly a 5-year in line with the 5-year horizon of the business plan. Next. There are a series of actions within those pillars and focus areas that are intended to move us forward. Some of them are relatively shorter term, a year or two. Some of them are 5 years, and some of them go beyond, but we capture the first 5 years, and the dots on the screen that you see identify which fiscal years those actions are most active in. Of course, we have a number of things that the agency is doing on a regular basis anyway, but what is in the business plan are those things that we're putting a special attention to or are changed from sort of standard practice. And so that's what brings us to put these in here. These are just some examples that I'm showing on the screen of things like implementing Forward Together, engaging riders on the whole host of planning and improvements that we do, cleaning plans for our maintenance teams, and hiring to make sure that we have enough operators and mechanics to keep our service going and expand it when we can. Next slide. And so just quickly, the review schedule and next steps for fiscal year 26 through 2030, that next 5-year plan, it would become active starting July 1st of 2025, which is the first day of our FY26. In order to sort of meet our schedule where the business plan is coming to you before the budget and the two processes are working directly with each other to make sure that we're not sort of missing our strategy and our hardcore financial responsibility and putting those together. The draft has to come to the board next month, so I've been working with staff for months already to start to think about what needs to be changed while we're tracking progress on this current fiscal year as well. So expect to see me back in January, and then there will be a comment period both internally and publicly from that point until the end of February, and then I would come back with a completed plan in March at the board meeting. And just to mention, the business plan is always available. There's an internal site so that TriMet staff can always get to it, so all Trimetans know where to find it, hopefully. But you can also find it just by doing a search or going to Google, or excuse me, trimet.org/businessplan. I think that's the last slide, yeah. So with that, I expect to see me back here in January. We're working hard with the responsible members for each of those action items and working on an update. That plan, as always, will have a series of sort of accomplishments or at least progress statements on the actions that are active right now, and then a series of actions identified for the FY26 and the 5 years all the way through FY2030. And with that, I will stop.
I do have, thank you, Alan. And just so that you know, we've invited you to our board retreat, which is in January, for the board to be able to take a little deeper dive into the business plan as we go forward. So board may not know that, but they know that now, that you'll be joining us at our retreat. Okay.
Thank you.
Alan, thank you for that. Next, I would like to ask Ahmad Garabi, partner with Ide Bailey, to come up and present the results of our latest external financial statement audit. This is Ide Bailey's third year working on the audit and related financial compliance. The external audit is an involved process that reaches all TriMet divisions. Financial Services leads the audit, working closely with Ide Bailey. So Ahmad, please proceed.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. This is the annual comprehensive financial report. It's a little different than the way it was presented in the prior years. In the prior years, it was what they refer to as basic financial statements. This is a comprehensive annual financial report. I do have a slide deck over here to go through what we did. So the scope of the audit is to ensure that the financial statements are fairly stated, and we issue a report called an auditor's opinion on the fair presentation on the financial statements. We also issue a report on internal controls. We issue a report on your federal compliance, and we issue a report on compliance with OMS. Next slide, please. And so it's a process that begins at the beginning of the year. This is the conclusion of it. We start the process sometime in March, and we continue on through the end of the year. And again, it is a confirmation process. I mean, it's an affirmation of the previously presented information to you by management. We just confirm. I mean, we confirm with your bankers, with your creditors, with the state, with respect to the payroll taxes and other revenues. Again, we don't test everything. Our responsibility is to plan and perform the audit to obtain a reasonable assurance. So we focus on the big numbers with, in some instances, we do focus on the smaller numbers, but it's not a 100% test of the population. And as I mentioned, we start the process sometime in March. So we do take a look at your internal controls. It's the focus as the internal controls as they relate to the financial statements, the manner you process receipts, disbursements, accounts payable, purchasing, payroll, HR, those types of functions as they impact the financial statements. And we do issue what they call a generally accepted auditing standards opinion. They call it a GAGAS opinion, and which is the report on the internal control. Next slide, please. I'm pleased to let you know that we issued a clean opinion on these financial statements. And that would include the single audit, the federal compliance, you receive Section 5307 significant funding from FTA. We do take a look at that. Government auditing standards, again, the internal control related items, we noted no significant deficiencies and no instances of non-compliance. Next slide, please. I did mention the single audit over here, and then also with the state, they do ask us to audit certain programs that you receive. STIF is the biggest one of them. And so, again, we look at the expenditures of the district, ensuring that they are in compliance with what the requirements are. Next slide, please. I am required to let you know that we are independent and we adhere to the independence requirements. This is a Board of Accountancy requirement. And just heads up, there's significant estimates in these financial statements, the most significant of which is the net pension and OPEB liabilities. There's a discount rate in there that will impact how big that number is as it's reported on your financial statements. And one more there with respect to the taxes receivables, it is also an estimate that was performed by the district. Next slide, please. The good thing about the OPEB and pension is that GASB requires you, GASB is the reporting standards that the district adheres to. It does require you to disclose to the reader of the financial statements how these liabilities will be impacted based on a change of the discount rate. So there's what they call sensitivity disclosure in there. If your discount rate, which is what you expect to make in terms of returns on these pension and OPEB plans, if it changes by plus or minus 1%, the liability will significantly change. Pleased to let you know, district has been very cooperative, so we noted no misstatements, no adjustments. There were no complex situations in the financial statements that required us to consult with the others. We are required to tell you if there are any, and we noted none. Next slide, please. This is an ACFR, and so it has more information. I like it because it has 10 years data at the very end of the report, information about, trends and like how your revenues are changing, your ridership, your, your fleet, your capital assets. Multiple things are disclosed at the end of the financial statements. And then at the beginning, there's an introductory section in there in which it talks about major initiatives by management. And we had, without management, there's no way that we would have been able to issue this. This is probably my first transit district that I issued this year. We issued it sometime in October. The team there in the finance department, Kara and her team, had done an amazing job. And I mean, again, as I mentioned, we connect with your externals, your creditors, your bankers, the state. And so what these guys do is just help us out in connecting with these folks to confirm these numbers are reported on the financial statements. Alongside with the fact that they worked on these financial statements, GASB is quite a bit of some standards out there, and it became rather complex over the past few years. And so they worked on this very hard, and this is the first year where they are issuing an ACFR. This typically gets to be presented to what they call the Government Finance Officer Association, and then you receive an award afterwards. We do expect that the district will receive that award. These are great financial statements. I think that's it. Next slide, please. Oh, yes. So we always incorporate unpredictability into the audit procedures that we do. And so off-cycle payroll adjustments is very common in transits, overtime, that kind of stuff. So that's one area that we put a focus on. We actually did test your P cards this year as well. We rotate. Every year we select an area, we rotate them out. And so I'm pleased to let you know that both of those passed glamorously. And again, it's an ACFR. I did mention this. And so the district is applying to GFOA, and we expect that the district will receive the award. Next slide. This is it. And with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I think that there are no questions at this time here, so thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Okay, next, I want to talk about TriMet's new Transit Mobility Center. It opened on November 25th in a new location with a new name, the Jan Campbell Transit Mobility Center. It's located at 7th and Holiday in Northeast Portland, Lloyd's neighborhood. It's a beautiful facility if you haven't had a chance to get over, so please, we'll try to get the full board over. It's situated along our MAX lines, red, blue, green, and it's close proximity to our bus lines and the Portland streetcar in the heart of the Lloyd's district. And accessibility is huge for this facility. This is where all of our riders who need lift paratransit, they are assessed and interviewed at this location. I was absolutely thrilled to dedicate the center to Jan Campbell, disability advocate, which you see on the screen there, and longtime chair of our Committee on Accessible Transportation. I'm sure that President Lewis and Director Frisbee both can attest that the new Mobility Center was packed for the dedication as we honored Jan and her unwavering dedication to accessibility, equity, and the belief that transit is for everyone. It was so heartwarming as well to see the support for Jan. She was touched by the event and having the mobility named after her. As she said, honors such as this often come after someone is no longer with us. And she enjoyed being able to be present for it, just to let everyone know. So just absolutely outstanding. Opening the Jan Campbell Mobility Center was just one of the highlights for us in 2024. As this is the board's last meeting of the year, let's take a look back at the efforts to make transit better for our region and to bring more people on board our buses and trains. So here's our year in review video.
In 2024, more riders got on board, 1.3 million weekly trips and growing, and more people, 475 plus, providing safety and security as we rolled out new tools for riders, a 24/7 security operations center, 24/7 security hotline, and blue light phones at select MAX stations. Our clean team made transit more inviting with cleaner vehicles, cleaner platforms, and fresh paint everywhere. Even our vehicles got a new look. A better red wrapped up with 10 more MAX Red Line stations, wait times cut by half, and reliability improvements system-wide, plus the first new MAX station in 9 years. Buses now run in place of MAX during late nights, and bus service got better with Forward Together. In 2024, we added new bus lines, faster routes that reach more places, and frequent service improvements, with more buses arriving every 15 minutes or better every day. Our push towards zero emissions got supercharged. 24 more electric buses, $39 million in federal funds for hydrogen fuel cell buses, starting on 82nd Avenue, home to our next frequent express line, plus $25 million for an operations facility to support our zero emissions goals. More service, more jobs, more operators, more mechanics. Our $7,500 hiring bonus became available for more positions, with the state's #1 Oregon-based employer, according to Forbes magazine. Always going the extra mile in challenging weather, major events, and new partnerships, like our soccer match Ticket to Ride, that bring even more people on board. Improving connections with you and for you. More transit tracker displays, more languages, more ways to meet our community where they are, including the brand new Jan Campbell Mobility Center, providing support to our Lyft paratransit riders. Riders responded, giving TriMet credit for a better experience. Lyft earned a 98% customer approval rating, and TriMet's overall approval edged up. So, let's roll into 2025.
Board, I want to just tell you how grateful I am to each one of you for you selecting me to lead this terrific and amazing organization. And I just want to thank all 3,500 plus employees that work at TriMet. Really appreciate what you have done for us in this remarkable year of 2024. So I wanted to just say that. That's a big round of applause. And just to conclude, I want to just say, finally, just recently, the Transit App 2024 Rider's Choice Award. So the Transit App is a transit app that's popular on our smartphones. It's a smartphone app. And you can download it for help, and you can get anywhere in the globe almost without a car. It connects users with transit agencies around the globe. For its 2024 Riders' Choice Awards, they asked riders what they think of public transit. If you think about 2024, it's been a year of competition and election ballots. If you really process it, we had over 5,000 medals that were handed out at the Olympics in Paris. There was 72 countries that went to the polls this year here, and now they celebrated the titans, that they call it, of public transit. So this year, there was over 100,000 people that participated and shared their thoughts in this rider happiness benchmarking survey. And the Transit app asked questions on everything from how people navigate their cities to whether cities, transit agencies consistently get them to their destinations on time. And the Transit app handed out these awards to both U.S. and Canadian transit systems that were at the top of their game in 2024. So when you think about when things go wrong, the best customer service will make sure there's a helping hand to set things right. And that is the standard that earned TriMet customer service team the top spot in the nation and with the Transit app. So we won first place as the best customer service in the Transit app's Ridership Choice Awards. And then what they stated is for the riders in Portland, Oregon, TriMet's customer service team were always there to pick them up, to dust them off, and to resolve their issues with the common Pacific Northwest presence. And I can tell you as a rider, and seeing them out there, it's tremendous to see the green vests and to see people come up and talk to you, whether it's the airport, whether it's downtown, no matter what, and they're helping people navigate our system. But to finish it out, Salt Lake City took second place, and then Orange County Bus System in Orange County, California took third. But I want to add, in addition to being number one in customer service, TriMet took the top spot for punctuality, followed by RTS in Rochester, New York, and by VIA Metropolitan Transit in San Antonio, Texas. Riders did say, they said that our buses and our trains get them where they need to go and on time. And we know, I talk a lot, I believe that we have the best bus operators in the world that work here at TriMet. And it was a very tight race with the best bus operators. Our operators competed with skill and heart and smooth braking. But if we're going to take second place, which we did, we will take it to our friends and colleagues at C-Tran. So C-Tran won first. We won second there. They took the best bus operator category, with us coming in a very close second by just a hair. I can tell you that on that. So again, congratulations to all 3,500 plus Trimetians for this special recognition and also for this powerful year that we've had from January 1st up until now. I am just absolutely heartfelt and grateful for everyone that work here at TriMet, and I salute you. So bravo to what you do every single day. And with that, President Lewis and members of the board, that concludes my report for this month.
Wow, you've outdid yourself, and the family of TriMet is just commendable for service, dedication, passion, all the above. Comments, feedback from board members?
Let's get them next year. No, incredible job, you guys. I feel like we should celebrate. These settings are so formal, but everybody here deserves a round of applause for all the hard work that you put in on a daily basis.
Director Frisbee, did you have comments? Oh, no? Oh, okay.
I was just echoing JT's applause. Sorry, Director Flowers.
Thank you. And on that note, thank you for the vision at the end of the year. It's always nice to see what we've done, where we've been, to know where we're going, especially with Vision 2030. Always when I'm looking at those year-end videos, it's probably my third or fourth, I always look to see what's not there. And I do want to shout out for the safety kiosks that I didn't see for the safety and security. That's kind of my area. So, but yes, the safety and security kiosks are also. And the thermometers that I had brought in for our meeting to remind us of ridership. None of this would be available to us today if it was not for our riders. 100%. We love our riders. That's important. On that note, let's turn to, thank you, General Manager Dessou. Let's turn to our consent agenda. Items appearing on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. This morning, the consent agenda consists of 2 items: approving the minutes from our last meeting of October 23rd, 2024, and a resolution directing that all ordinances today be read by title only. Does any director wish to have any of one of the 2 of the items removed from the consent agenda? Okay. Hearing none, turn the page. Thank you. So, is there a motion to approve the items contained in the consent agenda?
A motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and second. Does anyone wish to comment before we vote? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No? Nay? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're going to move at this time to our resolutions on our regular agenda. Resolution, our first resolution before the board today is Resolution 24-1263, amending TriMet's defined contribution retirement plan for union employees to increase the employer contribution, change to pickup contribution rules, and clarify the participant eligibility. Mr. General Manager, do you have any comments for this resolution?
Thanks, President Lewis, members of the board. The first 2 resolutions before you this morning regarding TriMet's defined contribution retirement plans. The first one applies to our union employees who make up the vast majority of TriMet's workforce. This is a housekeeping item necessary to implement agreements reached by TriMet and the ATU, or the Amalgamated Transit Union, in the working and wage agreement approved by the board in September of this year. In alignment with the agreement, the amendments increase the employer contribution for union staff in the retirement plan from 8% to 9% as of September 15th of this year, and from 9% to 10% beginning on December 1st of 2027. This resolution also clarifies provisions for employee contributions to retirement plans, which are referred to in the resolution as pickup contributions. An employee must set their contributions between 0 and 15% of their wages within the first 60 days of employment. This resolution establishes a default of 5% if an employee does not select a contribution. The amendments are further described in the board memo and shown in Exhibit A of the resolution. I would like to bring Kara Fitzpatrick up to provide her expertise on the resolution, and I recommend your approval.
Hi, good morning, board members. I'm Kara Fitzpatrick. I'm the Director of Financial Services. There is one slide that I have to just highlight what the resolutions are coming to before. Thank you. So under our current plan, looking at the union plan, there is a 8% employer contribution. Again, as our general manager just indicated, when the working wage agreement was agreed to back in September, there was language to increase our employer contribution from 8% to 9% effective September 15th, 2024. That is already in place. And then increasing the employer contribution again to 10% on December 1st, 2027. The resolutions also clarify when plan membership begins. Currently, plan membership begins the first day of the employee's date of hire with TriMet. Now, with this default election, the employee will effectively be entering the plan the earlier of when that employee completes the 401A election form, selecting between 0% to 15%. If the employee does not make an election, it will be the employee's 60th consecutive day of employment with TriMet, and that will have the 5% default employee contribution. So under the current plan documents, the employee contribution is set at 0, but under the new resolutions, the plan document will be updated to have the employee contribution set at 5% if the employee does not intentionally make an election on their 401A paperwork. I'd be happy to take any questions about the resolution or how we arrived at 5% or anything you may be curious about.
Director Flowers?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd really be interested in the last thing you just flagged there as a possibility for discussion, which is how you arrived at the 5% figure and how discussions with staff went on the topic, what folks were saying, what type of feedback we were getting from the folks who called us place home.
Yeah, definitely. So we looked at a couple of pay periods in calendar year 2024, and I can say that 5% is the most common employee election, between 0 and 15%. I can tell you that for our union workforce, that approximately 51% are electing 5% or more to contribute to their 401A account. For our non-union workforce, that is slightly lower at 45% are electing again to contribute 5% or more to the retirement account. And then the percentage that are contributing between 1% and 4% for our union workforce, that is around 17%. For our non-union workforce, that's slightly lower at 15 or 16%. And the difference would be those employees not contributing anything. So for our union workforce, about 32% is not contributing any, so they're electing 0. For our non-union workforce, it's slightly higher at 39%. So 5% is often selected as the contribution for employees.
Copy. Thank you so much. And then just as a follow-up on that, for the folks who, has there been conversation with staff about the potential impact about, selecting a number for them by default rather than allowing that default to remain at 0? Second question on that note is there flexibility should that 60th day hit and a person has failed to, designate a number for themselves, do they have flexibility in the aftermath of that 60th day to then go back in and change the amount that they're contributing?
Right, so when an employee joins TriMet, there's a lot of onboarding for that employee, and the benefits team reaches out and they provide the employee with their retirement information, and they will be doing education to help that employee understand you have 60 days to make a one-time irrevocable election between 0 and 15%. These are for employees who started with us December 1st and forward. Those employees, again, it's a one-time irrevocable election. That is per the IRS. That is not per TriMet. So if an employee takes all 60 days to make this decision and is unable to make the decision or doesn't make the decision, the employee will be effectively enrolled in the plan at 5%.
Okay, copy. And then, is there any enhanced staff outreach to talk to folks about this decision? Just understanding that for a lot of folks, 5% of their paycheck being allocated to retirement could have a material impact on their monthly budget.
Yes, absolutely, and we agree with that. And so the retirement team and the benefits team will make an effort to, when meeting with employees, help them understand how important this decision is. It is a one-time irrevocable decision. If the employee were to leave TriMet and they were to return to TriMet, that decision is still in place when they come back to TriMet. So it is a very important decision, and we'll be doing education and helping the new employees understand that this election is important and it's irrevocable. And they can elect 0% and elect not to contribute to the plan. They just have to be intentional about it now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Flowers. Director Kellogg?
Thank you, President Lewis. Ms. Fitzpatrick, thank you for your presentation. I want to just touch on what Director Flowers was talking about. And it wasn't that long ago that state of Oregon adopted the Oregon Saves program, so that every employee of a small business was automatically enrolled in a savings account, and they had to make the intentional decision to say, no, I don't want to be. And so I'm very much in favor of a default rate that says, yes, you're going to save unless you actively choose not to. One item that caught my attention, and you mentioned these words too, they were throughout the packet, one-time irrevocable choice. And my thoughts turn to, what if I'm 25 years old and I join TriMet and I've got to buy a house and pay for kids, and so I say 0. But I'm here 20 years and later I say, I want to make that 15. Am I unable to change my contribution rate after that initial choice? And if so, why?
I know. So that is a great question, and I have to emphasize this is an IRS requirement, a regulation that is not set by TriMet. And we are, once that election is made, it is irrevocable. So it is unfortunate. It's a difficult decision to make when you're 25 years old and you're paying for rent and utilities and you don't know how long your career will be at TriMet. But it is a very important decision. And that's why we felt 5% is helping that employee save for retirement for the long term, and hopefully, that is what happens.
Right, because it's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't
I hate to say
type
that, but
question. All right, well, maybe we look into that on the federal policy level universally. The only other question I had, and I don't know, Felicia, if you can bring it up, in the summary of the resolution, we always talk about what's the financial impact, and I saw that our contribution as the employer is going from 7 to 8 to 9. But the resolution said there's no financial impact on TriMet from this action?
I guess that is a good point. There would be a financial impact. The contribution has been included in our forecasting and our budgeting. So, what that dollar amount is, I don't have that right here with me today. I can circle back and obtain that, but I would say you're correct. There is a financial impact. The contribution, TriMet's employer contribution is increasing over time. That has been accounted for in our forecasting and planning.
Sure, and that's not a shot at you. I'm just saying, as generally, as a board member, I'm looking at this from 30,000 feet. I read this packet, and if it says no impact, but I'm thinking, obviously there is an impact, then I get a little concerned.
A good observation and a fair point. Agree, yes.
Thank you.
To assist in answering that question, that was the question I asked in the same question that Director Kellogg asked. 2 things I'm going to have the general manager respond. And then also, when he's done, can you share that employees have other options beside this program to join? So this is not the only one. There are 3 or 4 others in addition to this program. So it's not a you're out, you're do or done and everything. So General Manager?
Just very quickly, wanted to add to Kara's statement. There is a fiscal impact. It is included in the fiscal year 26 budget, just as well as going forward, or 25 budget into 26 budget. And we'll get that number for you that's there. The second piece I want to just call out, in your packet in Exhibit A, there is a typo there on the increase of the employer percentages in 2027. And what it states is that we're going to move from 9% to 10% beginning December 1st, but it says 2017. So instead of 2027 when that takes place. So I want to just make sure I call it out for the board, and we'll redact that and correct that.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that. To answer your question about our other retirement plans for our employees, so today we're talking about the 401A plan, and the 401A plan has a higher limit. The limit annually will be increasing to $70,000 in 2025 as compared to like a 457 deferred compensation plan that has a limit of $23,500 in 2025. So in essence, as setting this default contribution, the employer contribution to the 401A plan, the contribution limit is greater under the 401A plan, and TriMet also offers a defined deferred compensation plan. Our 457 plan has a lower limit. Employees can elect to change that contribution rate at any point during their employment. And that is employee salary deferral only, not TriMet's contribution to the 457 plan. And we have defined benefit pension plans. Those are closed plans, but we have a fair amount of employees in our defined benefit pension plans as well.
Okay, thank you for adding that additional information. Director Kim?
Thank you, Kara and team. I just wanted to comment that I am proud of us and the leadership for supporting our union workforce, as well as the non-union workforce we'll discuss next. But as we had considered and approved the fiscal impact that's tied to this when we're discussing the working wage agreement back a few months back. So I continue to be proud and thankful that we get to support our employees save for retirement. And this would be now in the back end, we get to make it consistent with what we had already agreed to our employees. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Kim. Director Frisbee?
Thank you, President Lewis. I just wanted to follow up. I think you answered this indirectly, but I think this is an important question, which is what are our employees' other retirement options where they do have some flexibility and some autonomy? Because I will echo Director Kellogg's question. Our goal is to have folks at TriMet who are here for a long time, and locking them in really early, your life feels really different at 25 than it does at 38 or 50 or later than that. So can you just highlight for us the retirement or savings options that employees have where they have some flexibility to choose and change as they grow in their career at TriMet?
Yes, definitely. So new employees starting with TriMet today have the option to enroll into the 457 plan. So that's a deferred compensation plan. They will be deferring their own salary into the 457 plan. They can make an election from 0 to 15% upon joining TriMet or at any point in their employment with TriMet. And then separate from the 457 plan are our 401A defined contribution plans. Those are the plans we're amending today with the resolutions. And those plans have both, and they can have an employee and employer contribution. For TriMet, we have both employee contribution allowable and employer contribution. And yeah, those are our plans. I know we have defined benefit pension plans, but those are closed plans. So if we're talking about our new employee workforce joining TriMet today, they have the 457 and the 401A.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Frisbee. Another comment, Director Flowers.
Thank you so much, President Lewis. Just one quick question on that. Have we on a staff level thought about the potential for, in instances where somebody neglects to make a decision, right? Shifting the employer contribution over to one of the other plans where staff actually have, agency in deciding how much money that they'd like to contribute.
Mm-hmm. We're really bound by rules set at the IRS level. Mm-hmm. And so for an employee who misses that 60-day window to make an election and they're effectively now locked in at a 5% contribution rate, we are not able to direct our employer contribution to say like a 457 plan for our employees. The employee has the ability to change their 457 election, at any time in employment with TriMet.
I wanted to add one piece. Kim Sewell.
Kim, yes.
Executive Director for Labor Relations and Human Resources. They will still receive the employer contribution.
Oh, yes, was that the question? I'm so sorry. Yes, yes. The employee will receive the employer contribution. They will have 60 days to make this election. The sooner they make the election, the sooner they are effectively enrolled in this plan, and the sooner the contributions can start to the employee's retirement account.
Copy. And that employer
Apologize.
contribution is tethered to this one specific plan, right? But it's not relevant to the 457 or the 401A, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, copy.
Separate forms, separate plans, separate contribution limits and levels.
Okay, thank you. Great questions. And are there any others? Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, hearing no other comments, just making a little round there again. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 24-1263?
So moved, Kim.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Does anyone wish to offer any other comments before we vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Nays? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Similar to Resolution 1, Resolution 2, 24-1264, amending TriMet's defined contribution retirement plan for its management and staff employees to change the pickup contribution rules and clarify the participant eligibility. General Manager, do you have any comments to this resolution?
Thanks, President Lewis and board members. This resolution is another housekeeping item. It applies to the management and non-union staff employees and their defined contribution retirement plan. It would amend the current pickup contribution election rules to mirror the union plan discussed in the previous amendment. This provides new employees with a default 5% contribution if the employee does not select their contribution level within the first 60 days of employment. And I recommend your approval.
Thank you, General Manager. No comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve Resolution 24-1264?
So moved, Kim.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and second. Does anyone wish to comment? Questions before we vote? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, motion carries. Remember to check Director Frisbee up there. Okay. Moving to our next resolution, 24-1265, approving the updated agency safety plan. General Manager, do you have any comments on this resolution?
President Lewis, members of the board, the Federal Transit Administration requires board review and approval of TriMet's updated agency safety plan by December 31st of each year to become effective on January 1st. Fulfillment of this requirement renews our commitment to safety and allows TriMet to receive federal funds, or FTA funds. The safety activities outlined in the 2025 Agency Safety Plan are integrated into TriMet's day-to-day operations and budgetary decisions. TriMet's Safety Department and our Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act Safety Committee worked with internal stakeholders and the Oregon Department of Transportation known as ODOT, TriMet State Safety Oversight Committee, to really update the agency safety plan and incorporate all items required by the FTA. Substantial changes were made from the previous year's plan to streamline it and comply with federal requirements. The length of the document was pared down from 144 pages to 77 pages to make it easier to follow or reference. Significant changes included reducing duplicate language and redundant paragraphs or sections, updating descriptions of revised safety programs to ensure accuracy and consistency, incorporating outcomes from the 2023 ODOT State Safety Oversight Triennial Review, updating the annual safety performance targets in accordance with the bipartisan infrastructure law, and really correcting errors in the hazard rating index and adding information about how to use the hierarchy of controls modeling to mitigate hazards. A section described our hazard reporting and tracking progress, a section detailing the safety and security roles and responsibilities of 23 departments that are integral to improving the safety of our transit system. Transit worker assaults, performance measure and performance target, and then a summary of risk reduction program, including activities deployed to reduce transit workers' assaults. And then finally, revisions were made to reflect our new, more robust configuration and change management plan. So I have thoroughly reviewed it, just to let you know, on quite a few times. Our COO, Bonnie Todd, has reviewed it as well. And then our Chief Safety Officer, Andrew Wilson, has reviewed it along with the full executive team. So it includes all of the elements required by the FTA. And once approved by the board, the safety plan will be submitted to ODOT for final approval and submission to the Federal Transit Administration, and I do recommend your approval.
Thank you, General Manager. Are any questions for General Manager? Okay.
Thank you.
You gonna put on board? Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate the comprehensive thinking about creating a safety culture at TriMet, and I know so much of these plans and the success of them is how it's actually implemented and across a lot of employees. And this is the first I've reviewed it, so I was hoping that you could share a little bit more with me how the metrics for success are really. I saw the charts for accountability and who's accountable for each of those measures, but really how they get down to the people that are doing the day-to-day work and how those people are supported in their ongoing training and how their work connects to the safety metrics that are outlined in this plan.
Yeah, great question. Good morning, Board President Lewis and TriMet Board of Directors. It's great to be with you. Yeah, our what we employ here at TriMet is called safety management systems. That's actually, and if you read into the document, you'll see kind of there's 4 pillars of that process. In that safety assurance pillar is contained our responsibilities really to establish metrics and then have some assurance that those are actually occurring. And so you'll see that in that document baked in. We have a pretty robust safety team. I'll give credit to Sam of really infusing safety. I mean, he really means it when he says it's the first priority here at TriMet, and we've felt that through addition to staff and additional training. We all, anybody that involves themselves in a safety investigation has to get what's called a PTSCTP designation, long acronyms. We're full of acronyms in this document. But that actually trains the professionals on how to execute SMS at the agency and actually establish targets and be a part of that safety culture, which has that safety assurance baked into it. We have various measures. Some of them are described in the document. Some of those are actually put upon us by the FTA, and those kind of grow iteratively through the year. And that's why I say here I am with a few days to approve this on January 1st. Just know that is not necessarily our fault or anybody here. we have an iterative process where we have to take this agency safety plan, including measurements, bring it back to that JSAC committee that Sam mentioned, get it approved, and that approval process includes 50% of frontline staff as well as 50% management, and that's by design by the federal government so that we're actually baking down our culture into the frontline staff so that they are a part of developing and approving this agency safety plan. So that takes time. Then ODOT's review takes time. We have tons of work. I work with an excellent team in our safety department that has worked on this document to pare it down to make it somewhat readable at 77 pages, and so we cut it about half. But so much of that is actually put upon us by the federal government and our SSOA, our State Safety Oversight Agency, which for our agency is ODOT. And so those measurements are developed alongside ODOT, and there's oversight from them on those as well. The agency safety plan has grown in importance, I think, across the country recently. We're now being managed, from our SSOA, who is also adding staff to be a part of our oversight relationship. We meet quarterly with those folks, and throughout the year are talking about our agency safety plan. So once this is approved, we will begin working on next year's safety plan in January, because there are so many additional things that are coming out from the federal government. Right now, you'll see we've been spending some time on operator assault. Really proud of TriMet. Basically what they're doing across the nation is adding in verbal threats versus just physical threats, and things that meet the statute of a criminal assault. TriMet has been doing that since 2019, so we've been ahead of the curve on kind of understanding that a verbal threat is something that we need to be tracking as well. The federal government's now making us do that. And the reason I bring it up is there's different targets that are being established throughout the year. We're probably going to get a whole slew of new ones this next year. I just found out this week. And so we'll be working on that. That's a really long-winded answer, I'm sorry, but there's a lot that goes into this, and happy to answer any more questions.
General Manager?
Yeah, I just want to add to Director Graham's question. We have multiple internal security committees at all levels of the organization that take the overarching goals and targets and push them down into the agency. So I want to just specifically try to get to your point that you're making. Andrew's talking from the 60,000 foot level. Yeah. All of that's forced down because we're federal regulated by Oregon State, just as well as the Federal Transit Administration. But internally to our organization, we have multiple security committees and security groups that push that information out. And we hold our leaders, our managers and assistant managers, and our supervisors accountable to get down to the frontline employees with that information.
Okay, at this time, we'll move to the motion to approve Resolution 24-1265. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you for the second, Director Kellogg. It has been moved and second. Are there any other questions, discussion, comments before we vote? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Director Frisbee?
I said aye, but I was muted. Sorry.
Okay, okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And safety plan is on its way to FTA and to ODOT. All right, let us consider Resolution 24-1266, adopting the fiscal year 2026-2027 statewide transportation improvement fund plan. General Manager, do you have any comments on this resolution?
Thanks, President Lewis and members of the board. This resolution before you adopts and advances TriMet's FY 2026-27 STIF plan, as well as authorize its submission to the Oregon Transportation Commission and the Oregon Public Transportation Advisory Committee for approval. This is required by mid-January. Our regional STIF plan covers an extensive list of funding practices and priorities, including our income-based reduced fares for students and seniors, service improvements, Portland streetcar service, TriMet lift vehicles, and much more. It consists of about $223 million in projects to be distributed among TriMet, the 3 counties, the various Clackamas transportation districts, and Portland streetcar. So approving the resolution allows TriMet and the rest of the region to receive and spend STIF funds. So Tom Mills, our Director of Mobility Planning and Policy, and Debbie Gregg, our Director of Grants, they will join us now with a look at what's inside the plan for the next biennium. And I do recommend your approval, but first let's hear from Tom and Debbie.
There we go. Green light is good. Good morning. Debbie Gregg, Director of Grants.
Good morning, Tom Mills, Director of Planning and Policy.
It's good to see everyone again. Just as a refresher, we were here a couple months ago to kind of go over our preliminary plans. So we've finalized those numbers for our 26-27 statewide transportation improvement fund plan, and we're here to present that to you this morning. So just as some background, the STIF fund was established in 2017. It's a dedicated funding source for improving, maintaining, and expanding public transportation for all users. These funds are derived from taxes paid on payroll wages, and it's dedicated in the area in which those wages were derived. The funds are allocated on a biennial basis from ODOT to TriMet, and TriMet has been designated the qualified entity for the Tri-County area. And so we have the responsibility to basically perform the plan, oversee the plan and the process from A to Z, from the plan application to drafting those agreements with our PTSPs and our counties, distributing those funds to the various counties on a quarterly basis, oversight on compliance and reporting. Yeah, it's it's some oversight and work. As the qualified entity TriMet, that the board is then considered the qualified entity governing body. And as mentioned, the responsibility is to approve the plan for submission. Next slide, thank you. So basically the STIF funding is made up of kind of 2 components. It's the payroll-based formula funds that has the broad uses for transportation, and then the STIF population-based formula funds, which are designated for those older adults and people with disabilities. Our Transit Advisory Committee on HB 2017 approved the plan on November 22nd. Again, the entire plan is $223 million in projects over 2 years. This is a biennium plan, so it starts July 1st, 2025 through June 30, 2027. Next slide. This is an overview. You'll see a lot of numbers today in tables, so bear with us as we kind of dive into this. But this is a plan summary. TriMet's plan is $199 million of the 223. Our public transit service providers, PTSPs, the plan is $13 million. The population-based funds that goes to those elder adults and people with disabilities, that funding is $10 million for the total of 223. So now we'll dive into our specific plan. Tom's going to go over kind of the detail, but I'm going to kind of hit the numbers on a high level. So ODOT's projected new STIF payroll-based revenues, it was $120 million. So we took the ODOT estimates from August, and their recommendation is also to put a 20% over projection, just in case those revenues come in at a higher rate. This plan is a spending authority plan. Basically, if it's not included in our plan, we cannot access those funds and spend it. So we want to make sure that we encompass as much as we can in order to be able to get those funds in our door and spend those. We have projected that we have some carryover and unspent funds from prior bienniums of $54 million. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail of what that makes up. Those are cash flows based on our October cash flow statements, and so we do have another 8 months, to kind of spend those funds down. We have some concerted effort to do that, and so if we go to the next slide, I'll go into the detail of kind of what makes up that $54 million. Some of it's in service operations, so there's timing delays. We have some service expansion that's going in and not till fall of 2025, so a bit of a timing delay on that. We have some capital projects that we actually got some federal funding for, and we prioritized some bond funding for. So that was Columbia Base and the ZEB charging infrastructure and transit priority improvement. We do have some capital projects that we actually went back to our project managers and they said, we intend to kind of utilize these funds for the end of the year. So that would be our transit centers, our workforce scheduling software, and some ZEB purchases that just have some timing delays on making sure that, you know, we have acceptance and meet those contract obligations. So we actually are going to expect to utilize the majority of those funds by June 30, our end of our fiscal year. And then we have some program reserve we designated in this current year for future purchases of those ZEB buses, and then some cumulative of some other tasks and things. So that kind of makes up that 54 million, but those are not new funds, those are just carryover that we have planned projects for, so. And then big pie chart level, this is where we intend to, propose our planned services. So a lot of it's going to go to our fixed route service. So I think with the availability and flexibility of trying to put that in our fixed route, we know we have expenses and operation expenses there. We'll be able to utilize these funds a lot for that. The STIF plan kind of is a little bit complicated in that if we put it in our plan and we're not able to use it in that task, there's not a lot of flexibility to move that money around to be able to utilize it. So we feel like if we can put it in fixed route service, we'll be able to utilize those funds. As stated, we have some lift vehicles, student fare, which is that 1% requirement, some subsidized programs, a little bit for STIF administration. And then I just wanted to point out that we do have a lot of these funds, almost $25 million, going to outside partners in our community. So with regional coordination, Portland Streetcar, and Human Services, those funds are all going out to our partners in our district. And then I'll turn it over to Tom to go into the detail.
Thank you. Good morning, Board President Lewis and TriMet Board of Directors. Thank you for having us. I'll just go into some detail on the individual projects themselves. As Debbie mentioned, the largest share of funds will go to service. That will both be service expansion as well as service preservation. Again, as Debbie had mentioned, part of the goal here is to really eat down that carryover so that we aren't carrying over large balances every biennium. And we know that if we put the money into service, we are going to spend it. And so 2 years from now, we do not expect to have the kind of carryover that we're showing this year. Additionally, it does provide the opportunity to give us more flexibility with the funds, because if we spend it on service preservation, then that will displace TriMet General Fund that we can move around. As Debbie mentioned, the STIF money, you can't really move it around much once you put it in the plan, but our general fund, of course, we can. So that is why we're recommending $145.9 million go towards service. Next slide, please. So this slide, again, 11%, $22.4 million going to the subsidized fare programs. These programs include the low-income fare program, the Honored Citizen Pass for active duty military reservists and veterans, the Summer Youth Pass, as well as the Transit Access Program, which provides grants to nonprofits that work with people who earn low incomes. Next slide. The student fare program. So this program goes, these funds go, it's 1.9 million, just under 2 million. These funds go towards a program that pays for transit passes for high school students whose families earn a low income and are not part of the Portland Public Schools. Portland Public Schools is on a different program, and this allows us to serve those suburban school districts. Next slide. This is the first time we've put STIF funds towards purchasing lift vehicles. This is the only capital project with STIF payroll-based formula funds. We do have a need to replace vehicles. This is $3.1 million, and it will be enough to purchase 17 replacement vehicles. Next slide. Regional coordination, as Debbie mentioned, we have a lot of partner jurisdictions who we provide funds to. The STIF legislation asks us to consider spending funds on making it easier for people to cross district boundaries. So we do give some money to SMART in Wilsonville and Sandy Area Transit to provide service between their districts and our districts. But we've expanded the goal of this to also provide those first and last mile shuttles around the region where there's demand for service, but it's not enough to be able to cost effectively serve with TriMet fixed route service. Next slide. And then the Portland Streetcar. Portland Streetcar is a transit operator in the region, and we give $6 million per biennium for them to operate Portland Streetcar service. Human services, these are funds that bolster the STIF population-based formula funds that Debbie was talking about earlier. Those are the funds that are for programs for older adults and people with disabilities. I'll talk a little bit more about these, but these are all going to partner jurisdictions instead of TriMet. And lastly, STIF administration, we do reserve some funds for the administration of this program. As Debbie mentioned, it includes the planning process, the contracting, the reporting, the compliance. There's a lot of work that goes into both building the plan and putting the plan into action over the biennium. So this table shows the full numbers. It's a lot for the biennium, a lot of numbers, but circling back to, as Debbie's slide earlier, it totals to $199.5 million just for TriMet. And just to recall, this does include the 20% overage, then the carryover as well. So moving on to our partner jurisdictions, as Debbie mentioned, we are the qualified entity for the 3-county area, but TriMet doesn't encompass the 3-county area. So there are areas outside TriMet that are in the counties that are paying the STIF tax. The state requires that they be part of our plan, and then when we receive funds from the state, we also pass those funds through to those partner jurisdictions. So they have also been out working with their communities and their county councils and transit district councils, boards, and developing their plans to be put into our plan. So what this is showing you is the totals for that. Now, in the first column, the FY26 to 27, those are the new STIF funds that are projected to come to those jurisdictions, plus the 20% overestimation on top of that. We all need to be at the same percentage of overestimation. If we can just go back, the middle column showing $6.2 million. This is their projected carryover as well as some interest that they've collected over prior biennia. And as you can see, they have some of the same timing issues that we do. I will say we are going to be working with them to kind of bring their carryover down as well. There is a good amount of this that is in that is funded through that regional coordination bucket that I talked about. And so we want to work with them on spending those funds down before we kind of give them more funds. And so then when you total that up, their total comes to $13.5 million. And next slide, please. And so when you see that as a pie chart, here's what you can see. Wilsonville getting the largest share. As I think I mentioned a couple months ago, you'll notice that the Clackamas County districts really kind of dominate the pie. The reason for that is because, Multnomah County is nearly all of developed Multnomah County where taxes would be paid is in the TriMet district, as well as developed Washington County. Clackamas County has quite a bit more development and communities and employment that is outside the TriMet district. So that is why you see so much more going to the Clackamas County jurisdictions. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the STIF population-based formula funds as well as the human services funds. Again, these are funds that go towards projects and programs for older adults and people with disabilities. We have a kind of a subcommittee to our STIF advisory committee. It's called the Accessible Transportation Funds Advisory Committee. They do a solicitation process for these funds. We do not restrict these funds by, where they were generated. So we do kind of open it up for the entire Tri-County area. So for those STIF funds, the population and the human services, that total amount is $14.6 million. I do want to point out below that you'll see federal 5310 funds dispersed by ODOT. These are federal funds that come to ODOT that ODOT then passes to our region. They are not part of the STIF program, but when we go through this process with the STIF population and STIF human services funds, we also ask them the ATFAC, to disperse the federal 5310 funds. There's some efficiency, obviously, in doing it all at once, but it also helps us as a region kind of have a bigger picture of all the funds that are going to be available and all the need that is there, and allows us to disperse those. So we just wanted to show you that $7.3 million as context, but that is not included in the plan. But just so you know, the ATFAC allocated $22 million in this process. And so focusing just on the STIF population and human services funds, you can see how those were dispersed. As I mentioned, they aren't necessarily restricted to where they were paid. The committee, you can see the largest share goes to Ride Connection, a nonprofit provider of transportation services for older adults and people with disabilities. They do operate in the TriMet district. They do operate a little bit outside the TriMet district. TriMet did get $500,000 for vehicle purchases. And then the next slide. Again, this is just the federal 5310 funds. They're not in the STIF plan, but just to give you context, TriMet did get another $1.5 million for that. So if you add the $500,000 from the slide before to the $1.5 million, that will be enough to purchase 11 lift vehicles. So you add those 11 to the 17 I mentioned earlier, and we are aiming to purchase 28 lift replacement vehicles. And so, in summary, you can see here the payroll-based formula funds for TriMet, again, comes to $199.5 million. The payroll-based funds for the public transportation service providers, our partners, is $13.5 million. And then the population-based formula funds is the 10.6. Remember, the human services is in that 199. And of course, this includes the 20% overage, the unspent funds, interest, regional coordination, human services, streetcar, et cetera. So that is our summary. And so just to reiterate what Debbie had said, on November 22nd, the HB 2017 Transit Advisory Committee, our advisory committee, voted unanimously to approve this plan, and it is now being forwarded to you via this resolution. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions from the directors? Okay. Director Kim?
Thank you very much, both. Very knowledgeable. Thank you for your service and for this presentation. I was looking at the STIF funds allocated by FTAC for TriMet, $500,000. And frankly, I thought that was quite small, right? We do wonderful work, including utilizing our the TriMet plan, right? For instance, our efforts on lift. That's coming out of our TriMet plan. I was curious if you had any sense as to if the FTAC, the committee, was making an intentional decision to give a smaller pie of the population-based funds to TriMet because of the bigger slice we get, and if so, what were some justifications? Because the way I see it, of course I'm biased, but TriMet, of all of the jurisdictions, when it comes to population-based work, I think we do more than $500,000 of the 14.5, right? So I wanted to seek some clarification there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're in complete agreement with you about that. I do want to point out that all the funds that went to these projects were for existing programs. There's nothing brand new in them. But we were disappointed with the results of this process. The committee itself is made up of community members as well as other transportation providers, TriMet included, and there is a bit of a conflict of interest on the committee, TriMet included, you know, you hate to say, well, this is the way we've always done it, but, you know, kind of this was the way we always done it, but, you know, based on this result, it is time to kind of do maybe a best practices review on how other areas allocate their STIF population-based formula funds, as well as their 5310 funds, and see how we can develop a process that is more equitable to the amount of service provided. I would also say that one of the things we struggle with is, you know, TriMet as a mass transit district, we are federally obligated to meet all rides and all requests for Lyft service. And, you know, we have to fight against that urge for some members on the committee saying, well, why should we give you this money? We know you have to do it. You're going to find the money one way or another. And I don't mean to be resentful, but that did come out in the process. That statement was made, and so again, I think we need to do a best practices review on how to do this process.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, Director Kellogg.
Thank you, President Lewis. Thanks for the presentation. I do remember, was it the October board meeting when you presented to us? So my first question to you is, from the October board meeting presentation to today, what has changed? Have we made any big revisions in where we're allocating money, and if so, where?
Yeah, thank you so much, Director, for your question. I would say the only big change, there was no change really in the plan for as far as the service the majority of going to fixed route service and then meeting our minimum requirements. The biggest change was just the carryover. That did increase based on our fine tuning of cash flows, but again, you know, we have another 8 months, you know, to kind of expend that down, and we have some concerted effort to do that. So I believe that would be the only really big change, is kind of fine tuning that carryover from our first presentation and preliminary.
Okay, thank you for that. We looked at the allocation of the dollars overall, and 70 some odd to fixed line service. Two questions on that. The first is, how granular do we have to be after fixed line service? Does there have to be 172 different projects that say this is where we're going to spend the money, or is it more of a abstract, this is where it's going?
So we're fortunate in that ODOT does allow us to be more abstract, more general, to give us that flexibility. That's how we've been doing it over the years, and they have not pushed back. If you were to look at STIF plans of the past, not necessarily with the lines themselves, but individual projects, we used to have a lot more projects, and again, with the restrictions on moving the money around, we have been consolidating as much as possible into, you know, as many general categories as we can, just to give us that flexibility. And now, of course, by consolidating so much into operations, we're really giving us a lot more flexibility.
Okay, thanks for those clarifications. More questions?
Thank you, Director Kellogg. I do have a question. I think it was the slide before, well, the slide that showed the carryover before the pie chart, and it was the 54. Are you able, once it's left, you know, you've moved into the next year, are you able to change the allocation of the carryover? There it is, okay. Or does it maintain, when you first apply for STIF and it's allocated, does it maintain all the way through, even when it's now in the carryover bucket?
No, it doesn't.
Oh,
so,
okay.
again, so really that carryover is all being put into service. And again, it doesn't mean that we wouldn't do these projects. It just means that by putting STIF all that STIF money into service, then if we choose, that can displace general fund money that can be used for these projects. And of course, general fund money is more flexible. So if we still have delays with these projects, we can use that general money for something else.
Okay, that's my question. Therefore, meaning if the HOP Pass for students had an increase, or there's a decision to add to that program with the carryover, you can increase that. Can you add new programs that were not originally? No, just the ones that were allocated, but you can move around the carryover.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. Yes,
to know.
and there's ODOT has stipulated there's a transfer process request that we can do
in,
to ODOT
okay.
to get permission. So there is some, some administrative things we have to do. But yes, if we have justification for, because 2 years, projecting out for 2 years, that's a long time from now.
Sure,
And a lot of stuff happens in between then. So if we see that a program that we have originally planned for in this STIF plan is maybe utilizing the funds faster, and maybe another program is not, if it's all within like an operations, there's some restrictions involved, we are able to, move a little bit of that through a transfer request process and be able to meet those needs.
So is that a decision that's internal, or does that come back to the board, or is there an amount that triggers it back to the board?
It hasn't come back to the board in the past. It is done internally. We do have to request for permission from ODOT. Typically, the amounts that we're talking about are relatively small, so that's how it's been handled.
Okay, but our carryover's pretty big this time. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Sorry, Director Frisbee?
Thank you. And apologies for being off camera, y'all. My cold is catching up to me, so I figured everyone didn't want to see me blow my nose every 20 seconds. Thank you for this presentation. It's a really complicated proposal with a lot of pieces in it, and I thought you guys did a really good job of breaking it down. I wanted to echo sort of two pieces that we heard here. Tom, you talked about in your response to Director Kim, perhaps a need to revisit best practices and the process for working through this. I just want to second that interest. I think this needs to be really looking at use and ridership and alignment with the legislature's directives. I will say I heard some complaints from folks across the region about the process that went into this. I've heard a lot of fewer complaints about the outcome, so I'm not usually as concerned about the process as long as the outcome ends up in an okay place. But I think we do want to make sure we are aligning with the goals and directives of the legislature and reflecting the use of these funds. I also, just big picture, and you both highlighted this briefly at the beginning, but I think when you look at what these funds are going towards, these are exactly the type of projects we hear more from legislators and policymakers down in Salem that they want to see more of, right? They want to see electric vehicles, they want to see more service, they want to see us supporting students and young folks and using transit, and they want to see us finding ways to increase ridership. And so legislators, take note, when you provide transit agencies with the funds to do this work, what you get is the outcome that you want. You get investment in the things that serve our riders and the people in our communities. And so I hope we all take that note moving forward into the next legislative session.
Thank you, Director Frisbee. Any other comments from any of my colleagues? Okay. Thank you. Is there a motion to, approve Resolution 241266?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Kim.
Thank you. It has been moved and second. Does anyone wish to add any additional comments before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Debbie and
Thank you
Tom,
very
for
much.
a great presentation on our STIF funds. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we will consider At this time, we will take a short break. Let's do 10 minutes, 10-minute break. Thank you. Everyone, let's go ahead and get started. We will continue our board meeting. I'm missing, oh, he's out there. Okay, let's commence with our board meeting to our resolution number 5. Resolution 5, 24-12-67, authorizing acquisition by purchase or exercise of the power of eminent domain, certain real property necessary for the operation of the Division Transit Project. General Manager, do you have any comments for this resolution?
Thanks, President Lewis. Members of the board, this resolution authorizes TriMet to take action to correct a title issue related to land acquired for the Division Transit Project and the signal system that speeds up our FX or Frequent Express bus service. So the board previously authorized the acquisition of about 150 properties along Southeast Division for the DTP project. This resolution addresses a legal issue specific with 3 parcels at Southwest 117th Avenue and Division Street. The property owner that TriMet worked with during the construction of the Division Transit Project thought they owned the property outright. But through our interactions with the title company, ownership of those parcels, specifically a 13-foot wide strip between 2 of them, has come into question. So TriMet needs to use the power to purchase or condemn the 3 parcels in order to identify the true owners and determine proper compensation. So once acquired, the 3 parcels will be transferred to the city of Portland, and this will allow the Portland Bureau of Transportation to assess a pole located on the property and maintain a signal that's part of the transit signal priority system that keeps FX buses moving around traffic congestions. The property acquired is included in the FY 2025 Division Transit budget project, and your approval is recommended.
Thank you, General Manager. Sorry for the little crackle there. Any discussion, questions, or comments from the board? Oh, thank you. We'll first take the motion. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 24-12-67?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Kellogg. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director. It has been moved and second. Does anyone wish to comment before we vote? Director Kellogg.
Thank you, President. Just very briefly, in the world of private property rights and government, condemnation is a terribly dirty word. So I just wanted to make detail here that the situation we're dealing with, I think a purchase offer is going to be made first, but there may be a situation here where we cannot identify who a landowner is. These are the kind of things that keep real estate attorneys up at night. So if we cannot find out who the purchaser was, then the only way to acquire this property is through condemnation. So again, this isn't our first choice, but it's sort of forced by the circumstances. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. JT?
Yes, thank you so much, President Lewis. Just to follow up on your point, Director Kellogg, for clarity on this end, these parcels are also incredibly small. Is that correct? That these are portions of sidewalks we're talking about. Is that right? Yeah, okay.
Correct, very, very small.
Question, do we need to see the map real quick, or? Nope, okay. Any other comments, questions from the board? Okay. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Okay. Resolution 6, resolution number 241268, authorizing a contract with Stacy Whitbeck Incorporated for construction management general contractor services for the MAC Station Rehabilitation Project. General Manager, do you have any comments on this resolution?
Thanks, President Lewis and members of the board. This resolution seeks board approval for pre-construction services and early work package for Northeast 82nd Avenue MAC Station. It's the first of 3 renovations planned for the grade separated stations along the Banfield or Interstate 84 corridor that were built as the first of the first MAX line, which began at service in 1986. If future budget allows, TriMet would like Stacy and Whitbeck to also renovate the Northeast 60th Avenue and Hollywood Northeast 42nd Avenue stations. These renovations are part of a larger Blue Line Stations Rehabilitation Program to upgrade 14 stations along the original MAX Blue Line. The work on 3 of those stations, Northeast 122nd Avenue, Northeast 162nd Avenue, and Gresham City Hall have already been completed. So I'd like to bring up Robert Vance, a Principal Project Manager for Engineering and Construction. Robert, to provide additional detail about work planned at Northeast 82nd and how it will benefit our riders. So Robert, over to you.
Thank you, President Lewis and members of the board. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Robert Vance. And as our general manager stated, the Blue Line Station Rehabilitation Program has completed 3 stations to date. And on the next slide, have some images showing those stations. On the top photo is East 122nd. That was completed in 2018. The bottom left. Oh, thank you. The goals for the program include bringing the stations to a state of good repair and improving the safety, security, and comfort for customers. The Northeast 82nd Station is the next project for rehabilitation. And TriMet received federal community project funding for the station, and it ties into investments along the 82nd Avenue corridor, including the FX line. So I'd like to share information about the station today. The images show the conditions of the stairs and the platform and some of the deteriorated concrete. And there's also a lack of weather protection at the east end of the platform that's shown in the center photo that's looking west, and the photo on the right, which is facing east. So the station is located along 82nd and the I-205 Banfield Freeway, and it's adjacent to the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. So it's a grade separated station, and access to the platform is from the stairs or from the elevator from the bridge above the tracks and the freeway. So it does present some challenges for construction in terms of site access. So next I'd like to show how the station will be renovated to replace some of the major components that have reached their end of useful life. So this image shows some of those elements, including refurbishing the platform and the stairway, replacing platform edge tactile warning pavers, and upgrading the platform shelter roofs and adding a second shelter. Also upgrading the CCTV cameras, lighting, and customer information systems. So next slide, in terms of the procurement process, the TriMet board did exempt the project from low bid requirements. And so TriMet solicited a best value request for proposals for construction manager, general contractor services. And so we're now requesting the approval for the recommended CMGC contractor, CC Whitbeck. The contract will include the federal grant language to meet the grant requirements. And currently the project is at 60% design, so this will allow us to advance the work into the construction phase. and includes an early work package to begin on-site investigative work to minimize the risks during construction. And thank you for your time, and turn it back to our general manager.
In conclusion, our evaluation committee determined that Stacy Whitback's price for the pre-construction services at nearly $83,000 is fair and reasonable and comparable with the ICE or independent cost estimate. The resolution includes an additional $10,000 for early work package, bringing the total just shy of $93,000. TriMet will continue to negotiate the total contract price for the project and return to the board for full authorization at a later date. The funds for the project's pre-construction services and early work package are included in the Engineering and Construction Division's FY 2025 budget. Stacy Whitback has 752 employees, 36% are minorities, 17.6% are female, and they have committed to using the disadvantaged business enterprises for at least 15% of the construction work, and I recommend your approval.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 24-1268?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and second. Does anyone wish to bring forward comments before we vote? Director Flowers.
Thank you so much, President Lewis, and thank you, Mr. Vance, for your presentation. Just a couple quick questions. The first has to do with the state of the 82nd Avenue MAC station. What is the condition of that elevator?
Well, the elevator's not part of the project. It's currently functioning. So most of the project is dealing with the platform itself and the amenities for the customers.
I've asked our Chief Safety Officer to talk to you directly about your question.
Okay, Director Flowers, that's an on-point question. We're talking 82nd, right? So 82nd elevator, we've actually had kind of a pilot going out there. You might have seen that related to access control to ensure that everybody has access to that elevator, particularly the most vulnerable in our community, the reason we built those elevators. Post-COVID, we had some really bad experiences going on in our elevators, not just us, across the country. We started to see this kind of migration of spaces that we created for folks that need those spaces start to be invaded by really bad kind of activity, whether it's drug use, you name it, a lot of things going on in there. And people just really occupying that space and making it something that's not accessible for folks. And so we've been working on a pilot, and you might have seen it out there. We actually did some media with CAT out there, the CAT committee, related to having proof that you have payment and your actual rider to be able to access that elevator. And that's got a lot of really good activity kind of in our community. We've heard from different groups that they're starting to see some better results. We're seeing better results because we're actually checking how many times we call Kone and others to actually work on the elevator, and we're starting to see that come down. And so we're really intently focused on 82nd, particularly the Banfield. That's where that rollout is going to be occurring first on the access control for the elevators. But because of the successes we've already had at 82nd, we're thinking about migrating that out into all the others, and we're actually working on that project in the background.
That's incredibly encouraging to hear. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And then I did have a second question relative to the contract itself. So, I understand that this was the only contractor to bid on this opportunity. I also understand that we work with them on a variety of other projects, all of which are really essential to the maintenance of our system and the safety and well-being of our, not just our operators, but our riders as well. I did have a quick question. We go out, they submit a proposal, we grade their proposal, they're interviewed, they're invited to submit a revised proposal. The only thing that concerned me in reviewing this documentation is that their revised proposals, their initial proposal score for contracting and DBE was a 27.33 out of 40, right? If we turn that into a percentage, that's about 68%. That's a D plus. And then their revised proposal got the exact same score for that same criteria. That's again criteria D on contracting and DBE. Would you mind talking to me a bit about what goes into that score and why we didn't see any improvement from their initial proposal to their revised proposal?
So yeah, that's a large portion of the score at 40 points. And so at the stage that we're at, you know, they're just developing, you know, their plans for outreaching to contractors, and you know, talking to us about the promises that they can make for their goals for establishing the DBE. So I think giving the information that the selection committee had at the time, that's, you know, the interview process didn't change, you know, how people wanted to score them for that category. But there will be continued, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, there will be continued opportunities to work with them on their contracting plan as we go through and establish that construction contract.
Okay, thank you. That would be fantastic to hear back on that, especially as we get through the kind of pre-construction and early work packages and start heading into a larger, more significant contract. Would love to hear an update on that at some point.
Okay, I'll make a note.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Flowers. Director Kellogg?
Thank you, President Lewis. Thanks for your presentation. I'm going to riff a little bit on what Director Wilson brought up there. The restricted elevator access, everybody's happy with that. We've had broader conversations, at least Mr. Wilson and I, about thinking about restricted access for entire stations. And, you know, that's a premature idea at this point. And no, we haven't adopted that policy or looking into it, but because we're redesigning all these stations and there is a safety and security element outside of the elevator improvement to this project, can you tell me first, what are those safety and security improvements that are being done at this station?
Well, a lot of it is refreshing the lighting. So there'll be new light poles and part of the design process is to ensure that the lighting that's put out there meets our design criteria. So that's one aspect. Another is the chance to replace all the CCTV cameras, have more cameras available, and with the latest technology, and making sure that those are positioned properly and lit appropriately as well. There's also another pilot for the emergency phone that's currently installed on the platform. So the plan is to, you know, include that in the final plans. And I think, am I missing anything else?
No, primarily when we talk about security upgrades in this, we're really talking about CCTV, surveillance, and lighting. So SEPTED kind of elements that were built into this particular project, SEPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. So, but when we talk about leaning into innovation for access control, that did not make it into this type of project. We're doing the project related to the elevator. When we talk about kind of moving more towards access control for our stations, which is something we are exploring, we actually have work being done to explore that, particularly on the Banfield alignment, because we have some kind of grade separation in terms of how you get down to the platforms. So 42nd, 60th, 82nd, those are kind of some of the first areas we're looking at, and just controlling access to the whole station, not just the elevator. But we're using the same technology that we're looking at for the elevators to sort of control access to the station. I will say, and I think you and I have had this conversation and others, a lot of work goes into this. This is going to be a difficult lift, but we're starting that process, and I think it's where we need to be, quite frankly. But we built an alignment that was pretty open back in the day, and we built in the 80s, and we're starting to see that we need to have some additional control elements, particularly at areas on the Banfield and some others. And we're hearing that directly from our riders. So we're headed in a good direction, but it's going to be a lot of work to get there. But really excited about what we've been able to accomplish for the elevators thus far.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Kellogg. Others? Director Frisbee?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to just follow up briefly. You've now heard from 3 of us about the elevators, and I want to applaud that effort and say I've heard from folks very positively about their experience with that, and I'm glad to hear we're moving forward with all that, and that the pilot is continuing to go well at 82nd. I understand the scope of this project is limited just to the MAX platform. I have heard from folks who use the line, and in my experiences out using the bus pickup and drop off right above the station, that the lighting is concerning there, and it is also feeling a little dingy, I think is one of the words I heard used. So I don't know what opportunities we have to do either a deep clean out there or some upgrades to the bus stop to complement the MAX station upgrade, but I would encourage us to think about that.
Thank you, Director Frisbee. Excellent. Are there other comments before we vote? Okay, I'm going to move to a vote. All in favor for this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
For the record, I was an aye. I was just not speedy enough with the unmute button. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, we will consider our next resolution, number 241269, authorizing a contract with Just Bucket Excavating Company, Incorporated, for the Powell Division Safety and Access to Transit Project. General Manager, do you have any comments for this resolution?
Thanks, President Lewis. Members of the board, if approved, this resolution would authorize a contract with Just Bucket for construction of pedestrian safety improvements at 5 locations along Powell Boulevard and Division Streets, and Portland, and also in Gresham. These improvements focus on increasing safe access to transit as our riders and pedestrians first and last. Improvements will also include additional lighting, upgrade signage, and striping, ADA ramps, sidewalks, bus stop upgrades, a rapid flashing beacon signal to alert drivers when people are crossing the street. TriMet issued an invitation to bid for the contract with Just Bucket's bid of about $1.1 million, determined to be the lowest, most responsible bid, and a fair and reasonable bid. It was also considerably lower than TriMet's ICE, or independent cost estimate, which came in nearly at $1.6 million. So due to the potential unforeseen circumstances that can result in changes to the scope of work, we've adjusted the change order amount up to 20%, which will increase the overall contract amount to about $1.3 million, which is still less than our independent cost estimate. Funding the project is included in our Strategy and Planning Division FY25 budget, and most of the funding, about 90%, comes from entities other than TriMet, including our STIF. Just Bucket Excavating is a minority-owned business and disadvantaged business enterprise. It has about 18 employees, about half are minorities, and about 22% are females. The company has pledged to subcontract 26% of the work to COVID-certified firms, and I recommend your approval.
Thank you. Before we move to comments, is there a motion to approve Resolution 241269?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. It has been moved and second. Does anyone wish to comment from the board before we vote? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. There is Tyler. Okay. I looked.
You did. I was sorry.
That's
I was
okay.
trying to get a chance. As the person whose district is in, or whose district this project is in, I am glad we're moving forward. I have questions about how this fits in with the larger ODOT Outer Powell project, but I will follow up with those individually. And in the meantime, I just want to emphasize the community on Outer Powell has been engaged and advocating for a really long time on the safety work. I'm really glad we're able to do this. And I think we all know and hope that there is a longer term vision for Powell, which, while it does not obviously include the Division Transit project, includes more safety and more transit investment for the community out there.
Thank you, Director Frisbee. Any comments, or were you going to share anything additional? Okay. All right, let's move to the vote. All in favor? Oh, you did? Director Flowers.
Yeah, I just wanted to applaud the procurement team for the way this contract has come together, for that change in potential overhead, and for still managing to solidify a contract by a firm capable of doing really, really good work for far less than our independent assessment. That's encouraging to see, just from a good governance perspective. It makes me very happy on this end, so hats off to you guys.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, we will move to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. At this time, I am pausing our regular business meeting so that the board may convene as the TriMet Contract Review Board, the TCRB Board, to consider the next resolution. It's Resolution 8. The Oregon Public Contracting Law and our TCRB rules allow the board, in its role as the TCRB, to exempt the procurement of a class of contracts from ordinary low bid requirement and allow TriMet to consider factors in addition to price in awarding a contract. Authorizing the exemption will allow the agency to use a best value request for proposals process to procure the contracts. In our role as the TCRB, we are now to consider Resolution 24-1270, authorizing a class exemption for mechanicalized track maintenance support services. General Manager, do you have any comments for this resolution?
Thanks, President Lewis and members of the board. Our MPAC light rail tracks require regular maintenance by specialized equipment that TriMet does not own or operate. Therefore, the Maintenance of Way Department, as known as MOW, relies on outside maintenance service contractors with specialty expertise to address significant problems and track conditions. This type of service is often needed on an emergency basis and is handled through task orders. The majority of services needed will be along the embedded trike locations for our oldest segments of the MAX Blue Line. But the work could include trike repair and replacement or signal upgrades and replacements anywhere along the MAX system, 126 miles of active trike. TriMet is requesting an exemption from low bidding in order to select several qualified contractors using this competitive RFP rather than a traditional low bid procurement. An RFP allows TriMet to consider the potential contractors' small business subcontracting plans and internal workforce diversity. So various projects are estimated to range between between $20,000 and $2 million. The anticipated cost of the work is included in the Maintenance Division's FY 2025 budget and expected to continue on an annual basis, and I recommend your approval.
Thank you, General Manager. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 24-1270?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and second. Does anyone wish to comment before we vote? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. I hereby adjourn the TriMet Contract Review Board and reconvene our regular Board of Directors meeting. Okay. I now request our General Counsel, Shelley Devine, to read Ordinance 379 by title only.
Thank you, Ms. Board President. Ordinance number 379 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, amending Chapter 14 of the TriMet Code to revise the definition of net earnings from self-employment. This is the first reading and public hearing.
Thank you. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak concerning Ordinance 379? Okay. Thank you. Mr. General Manager, following our first reading and public hearing, do you have any comments on Ordinance 379?
Yeah, President Lewis, thank you, members of the board. I would only mention that this is a housekeeping item adopted by the board on an annual basis. Thank you.
Thank you. We will not be voting on Ordinance 379 until its second reading, which will take place during our January 2025 board meeting. However, at this time, do members of our board have any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Okay. Nope. Okay, seeing none, that concludes our formal business for today. At this time, the board business meeting is adjourned. I get to use this. Okay. Exciting. We're going to take a short break before we begin our board briefing on one of my favorite topics is the TOD development update. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll now have a board briefing on the Transit Orient Development, TOD. Update presented by Guy Ben, Program Manager for TOD Strategy, and Fiona Lyon, Program Manager for TOD Design. First, before we start, we will hear from our General Manager.
Thank you, President Lewis and members of the board. Our program manager for TOD strategy is Guy Ben, who's here with you, and also our program manager for TOD design is Fiona Lyon. And they are here to provide you with an update on our TOD program. But before they begin, I'd like to just take a moment to publicly congratulate Fiona. She is and was one of our Daily Journal of Commerce 2024 Women of Vision. So let's give her a big round of applause. And the honor really reflects her creativity, her vision, her commitment to delivering transit-oriented development projects for our region. So really, congratulations to you. Well done. And I'm going to turn it over and say, take it away.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much, President Lewis, General Manager DeSue, members of the board. Yeah, from my personal perspective as well, I'm going to sort of double down on that. And I couldn't be more grateful personally for Fiona's hard work and effort promoting transit, TriMet, and the TOD program, because it wouldn't be much without her, to be honest. So I know it's been a long meeting this morning. We will try not to keep you from your lunch and other appointments. We have about, I think it's about 16 slides to run through, so we're going to run pretty fast. But before we jump into it, we are going to do a quick overview of the TOD program for the benefit of the new members of the board, and also just to give a reminder and an update to others. So next slide, please. So really highly, I'm going to talk quickly about the program structure. And there are a number of key elements that are shown on the slide in front of you. First of all, the visions and goals for the program. These were approved by the board in the TOD guidelines that were passed in 2020. And those TOD goals are listed on the right-hand side of the slide. There are 7 goals in total. I won't run through them because I think you can all see them here. But really what they boil down to is that they are designed to basically both support TriMet and support the communities that we serve by delivering thoughtful, higher density, transit-focused development around our transit infrastructure. And that means building communities that have mixed incomes, mixed use, deliver employment opportunities. They reduce people's reliance on private vehicles, so on and so forth. So these are big visions, big goals. As it relates to the program, we have, in 2023, we produced a regional TOD plan, and that effectively outlines how TriMet implements those goals. And so that is a more detailed, longer document, but it basically starts inventorying all of TriMet's TOD sites, and then it outlines how TriMet effectively prioritize those sites, and then how we basically go through determining what should be built, and then how we make decisions in selecting developers and moving those sites from plans into actual joint and transit-oriented development. The whole purpose of the plan is really to bring absolute transparency and structure and continuity to the program so that it sustains and that any party that is interested in participating and engaging with TriMet on transit-oriented development can understand it by looking at the plan, work out how do they engage with the team, how do they see which sites are coming forward, what sites are available, so on and so forth. Overall, the North Star for the guidelines and the plan is basically to accelerate TriMet's efforts in delivering transit-oriented development around the region. And on the bottom left of this slide, you can see where we stand today, which is in the last 5 years, just under 1,000 units of housing have been delivered through the plan. But more significantly, 74% of those have been affordable housing. And, you know, our goal with the plan and the whole structure and the continuity and the transparency is to be able to accelerate that. And we're going to talk a little bit later on about how we're hoping to bring another 100+ units within the next sort of 2 to 3 years on one site, but there are many more coming forward. Next slide, please. So Fiona's going to talk a little bit now about current projects, starting off with the Hollywood Transit Center.
Thank you, Guy. Yeah, we're just really hoping to give a preview of some of the projects that we're working on, let you know what's happening in our agency's program, see if there's any questions about what we're doing. First, I'll talk about Hollywood Hub. You've heard about it for a long time. It's been our hardest project, also one of our most impactful projects. It's been a big fall. The ramp and stair structure is nearing completion. It is open to the public. I'd advise anyone to go check it out in person. We've been receiving really good feedback. It is a huge improvement over the structure that was out there to date, or previously, if anyone recalls that. And we achieved a big milestone, which was basically doing a turnover between the projects that are going on out there. So TriMet's team with Ray Moore has been working on these infrastructure components. We call them kind of phase 1. And they have dialed those in. Those are pretty much delivered to date where they're going to stand for the next 2 years. And we have done a turnover to our development partner, Bridge Housing. They are working with O'Neill Walsh Community Builders. So you'll see out on site, they are doing mass excavation right now. And really that means the start of the housing project is underway. And that will be about 2 years of construction. So we're really grateful for the community for being very patient. Construction is a long, kind of tedious process, but our contractors are being very respectful, really responsive, and we appreciate, yeah, just our patrons kind of bearing through the construction while this is going on. So if we go to the next slide, just wanted to kind of share a reminder, again, with new board members on kind of what the Hollywood Hub project looks like in terms of the housing component. This is just kind of a summary of what's going up out there. It is a 12-story building, 224 units of affordable housing, will bring significant ridership, and there's a suite of other kind of amenities on site for the public and for our riders. And I would just add, we are doing a groundbreaking event in January, if any of you would like to join us, just to kind of commence, you know, to celebrate kind of where the project's at. If we go to our next slide, kind of totally different project phase. That is a project in construction. We also do a lot of planning work in our program, really just trying to understand kind of community visioning. If you recall, I think about in the last year, we received a grant from the Federal Transit Administration for $315,000 to do exactly this, just station area visioning, and really look at kind of some development concepts, understand, you know, what's missing in the community, how we can really kind of re-envision 2 of our sites. The sites are both on the east side. It's the 122nd and Menlo Park and Ride, and the 181st Park and Ride out in Rockwood. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that we've been doing a lot of engagement, primarily talking to community benefit organizations, but we had 2 public open houses last week that were well attended. And we're really, I think the main question is just what type of programming is suitable and what is kind of the vision that we should be working towards. Again, what is that North Star for these 2 specific sites that would really anchor these sites in the community. So we will be posting, there's some beautiful kind of boards that give an overview of our goals for the site, for the project, kind of the massing studies that we're looking at, kind of site circulation. So I'll encourage everyone to check out our website. TOD does have a website within the TriMet webpage, and we will be posting these materials next week, if anyone's interested. And I'm going to hand this back to Guy to go over a couple more projects.
Thank you, Fiona. Next slide, please. So this is actually quite a sort of good example of the TOD planning that we do. and the results that come from it. So this, on the left-hand side here, you can see a rendering of a master plan for the Willow Creek Park and Ride. And this was conducted, we completed this TOD planning work last year, last spring, again using an FTA pilot grant to do it. And it identified effectively a master plan project that could deliver anywhere between 450 to even as high as 600 units of housing at Willow Creek, along with community supportive uses, small retail footprint. We've been working on, having worked on this, we worked with the City of Hillsborough on this master plan. And then earlier on this year, in early 2024, midway through this year probably, the city came to us and said, listen, we actually had a project that is not proceeding, it's an affordable housing project, and we have an allocation of affordable housing bond funding. And so we got speaking with the city, and they knew that we're looking to put affordable housing per this master plan at Willow Creek, and they said, would we be interested in doing a joint solicitation at Willow Creek for an affordable housing project, which made us very excited. You know, this is a really good opportunity. I think most of the board here are familiar with affordable housing and how it's developed and delivered in the Portland metro region. The Metro Regional Affordable Housing Bond Measure is now effectively almost entirely spent. So this is some of the last remaining funding. And so we have been working with the City of Hillsborough over the last 3 to 6 months to basically work out a structure that we can do a joint offering or a joint solicitation to basically offer TriMet's land and the city's affordable housing bond dollars to bring affordable housing to the Willow Creek site. If we go to the next slide, please. So this is an aerial shot of the Willow Creek Park and Ride. And you know, per our sort of master planning, we did recognize that we were going to deliver the project in multiple phases. And you know, we've been refining that master plan over the last 3 months. And we've identified that phase 1, which would be the affordable housing phase, is a 3-acre site at the north end of the park and ride. It's currently just undeveloped grass area and some shrubs. And it can accommodate up to 118 units of affordable housing. The Metro bond requirements require that affordable housing has to be 60% area median income or below for a 60-year period, and we're very happy and fine with that. And also, one of the other requirements is that we're looking at a way to basically do a joint sort of stormwater facility that will service not just the phase 1 site, but the phase 2 site. And so we've come to an agreement with the city on that. So effectively, where we currently stand is that we are working with the city to basically finalize an intergovernmental agreement that basically commits TriMet to selling the land and the city to offer its funding. And that goes out as an RFP, requested for proposals, to affordable housing developers in the spring of next year. You know, there are many benefits. Firstly, it's easier for affordable housing developers when there's land and funding that are offered together. And secondly, it'll benefit TriMet because firstly, it kickstarts development of the larger site. It provides this shared stormwater infrastructure, and ultimately, it'll help us move forward when we can offer phase 2, which is likely to be a workforce or market rate housing project. It'll help us sort of separate the two projects and keep them at arm's length, which is always a challenge when we're trying to do a mixed-use development. So that's where we're at today. In terms of our sort of immediate next steps, we're aiming to complete the IGA in the coming weeks, and then that will go to the City of Hillsborough for council approval in mid-January. We have to do a land use review process that allows us to separate out the phase 1 site, and so it can be offered for sale separately from phase 2. And then obviously we would work with the city on the RFP solicitation in the spring. But it's super exciting, and we think it's a very good template for future projects as well. Next slide, please. And finally, to wrap up, again, another sort of really good news story, and you'll probably hear more about this in the coming days or weeks. And actually, I was with Dr. Lewis out in Gresham about 3 weeks ago at a public-private partnership event, or sort of training event. But in the city of Gresham, next door to City Hall Max Station, we've been working with Multnomah County on the new East County Library. That's a 95,000 square foot facility. The project is moving at breakneck speed. Having been, we initially started discussions with the city and with the county in late December 2021. It's due to top out, i.e. the construction will place the last beam, I think next week. And then it's due to, to continue with fit out and finishing the interior of the library, but it's due to open up in the spring of 2026. And as you can see on the slide in front of you, it's a mass timber construction, which is very exciting because that's obviously, you know, environmentally more sustainable, and obviously aesthetically it looks great. But it's, you know, it's really coming up fast, and it's going to be a new landmark for the Gresham neighborhood. So it's super exciting, and yes, Dr. Lewis. There is a small celebration with really just the construction team working on it, which will happen next week when they place the beam. We're working with our PIRO team, and they're going to try and record it so that we've got all the. There's a little bit of, you know, weather requirement. You know, you have to be somewhat careful because it's a construction site. So you know, but we're working through all of that. But then there will be a more formal opening and ground, you know, ceremony, probably, I would have thought, in the fall or spring of early 2026. So it's a super exciting project. You know, I think when we were learning about P3s, which are public-private partnerships, one of our comments was actually P3s can exist as public-public partnerships as well at the same time. So again, looking to see if we can replicate, you know, this type of model. Adjacent to this site, we have another small TOD parcel for residential, well, we think residential development, which again, we're hoping to start an offering process early in next year and then bring forward develop on that site. So that's a summary of the program and our current projects. And obviously, we'd be very happy to answer any questions. And thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Director Flowers.
Thank you so much. I don't. Is this still public? This is still a public setting in the meeting. Okay, copy. You know, the room has cleared out for those watching on the computer screen, so it's hard to tell for a newbie like myself. You know, this is my wheelhouse, so thank you so much for your presentation. Just a couple quick questions. I imagine they'll be pretty easy for you to answer, but I got a few of them, so bear with me here. You know, the first is how we're thinking about this concept of affordability. You know, we know that AMI for all of its uses is also a very inaccurate metric when we apply it to our most underserved and underrepresented populations, right? For instance, the average black family typically is situated somewhere around the 40% AMI range, which means they don't qualify for 30% units and they don't make enough money to afford a 60% unit. So how are we thinking about this notion of affordability and trying to think about deepening the affordability of the transit-oriented development that we're working on right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure I have an immediate answer, to be honest. You know, we, as TriMet and the TOD team, we always assess projects based on the benefit that they bring to the community and the benefit they bring to the agency. And we work closely, you know, TriMet is not the developer. You know, we partner with developers, be they affordable housing developers, be they, you know, municipalities, market rate developers. We are constantly looking at, you know, across nationwide to see how innovation and people are addressing these challenges. And, you know, we meet with groups like PHB and other, you know, other sort of, we go and meet, we're setting up meetings at state legislatures level, we're speaking with HUD local office here, the field office, to try and find out how do we really address these problems, because we recognize it exists, and you know, we're open to ideas, and that's the purpose of the plan and the program is so that people can come to us and we can go to them and we can have this dynamic conversation to try and address these challenges, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would just add, I think looking at the housing continuum more broadly, like we are trying to figure out how we can serve a variety of folks. I would remind you, at Menlo Park, the planning that we're doing, there is a Safe Rest Village there to date. So we're trying to capture also even like kind of interim, near-term needs that we can provide on sites. I would say we're also looking at more kind of user groups in addition to affordability, just like we have heard through that outreach on the east side, just the need for large family units. Somebody said they Googled 3-bedroom apartment in Gresham and like one apartment comes up. So we're trying to think about also like just like not so much kind of, a lot of the income affordability metrics are set by the federal government. So I personally, it's a little bit above my wheelhouse. Like, I don't think you can go in for 40. I think there's very clear thresholds. But I think we're trying to understand the nuance within that. Like, are there categories of folks in that income spectrum that are seeking large family units, and just kind of understanding the nuance of the market gaps, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right to say that, we are restricted to certain bands, but there are creative ways we could start to think about what it looks like to reduce a family's overall monthly expenses through a housing development, right? That doesn't just include rent price. So, for instance, in some of our developments through the Albina Vision Trust, where I work day to day, we've really leveraged, this concept, of energy efficiency to really reduce utility costs. So if you live in our inaugural 94-unit affordable housing development, which is primarily 2- and 3-bedroom units, right, where it's focused on families, understanding that that's a huge gap, you won't pay a water bill, a gas bill, an electricity bill, or an internet bill, right? And that's going to reduce families' rents by upwards of $300 a month, right, when you think about their overall cost of living. So even though they might still be in a 60% unit, right, a family making slightly less than 60% could actually afford to stay in that unit, given that they don't have to carry all those other costs. So that leads me to the second thing I was going to talk about, which was, some of these plots of land, especially out in Willow Creek, are pretty significant in scale, right? You talked about the first parcel, which is, 2.9 acres. What is the second parcel, which is currently the parking lot? How large is that? Or will that remain a parking lot?
Yeah, I believe it's about 8. I think the whole site that we own is 12 and change. That does include the PCC building and kind of the transit bus loop that's out there. We could definitely come up with a size, but I think it's like 8 acres. Okay,
well, just the scale of it alone makes it a really good candidate for a district-wide energy conversation, right? There are things like, thermal energy networks, or, just district-wide microgrids that actually might allow TriMet and whoever the developer ultimately ends up being to really create energy efficiencies at scale in a way that wouldn't be possible on a building-by-building basis. So just another thing for us to be thinking about as we're going through the process of scoping out these different RFPs and, soliciting contractors to bid on projects. There's a ton of room for innovation, and I'd be happy to carve out more time offline, even to have you guys over for a tour of the Albina Vision Trust District, where we're dealing with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, it's the largest restorative redevelopment in the United States of America, so we're really trying to think about these exact same questions at scale. Would love to be a partner as you guys go about your day-to-day work as well.
Yeah, thank you, Director Flowers. You brought up a great point just about kind of the scale being the unique element out there. Not all of our properties are that large. We have been talking about microgrids and kind of what that would look like. The Energy Trust of Oregon has had a couple awesome projects that they've been highlighting to kind of lead the way on what that would look like on a site. I think that's kind of one of the benefits that we see of our program, is that we can kind of make those requirements and kind of steer development to be more sustainable. So we're definitely constantly thinking about how we build those into a transaction.
Just to add to that, is that when we receive proposals, we're always looking at, those considerations like sustainability, but also, if it's, we've seen projects, for example, with radiant heat, for affordable housing, which is a huge improvement on the bog standard cheapest approach of just putting what's called a PTAC unit into a window, which are electricity based and really expensive to run. So, when we make sure that the scoring criteria, we were having this exact conversation with Hillsborough last week, the scoring criteria reflect the fact that this is affordable because not only is it a lower rent, but also is because it actually costs less to run. And there are other sort of tools that we're looking at. So the state has a middle income revolving loan fund, which basically can support infrastructure that basically it's a loan to the developer to put in infrastructure that allows them to deliver workforce housing, which is another huge hole in the housing continuum. So so we'd love to talk more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'd also be remiss to point out that transit-oriented development in and of itself, specifically when we're talking about housing, is a cost-saving measure for families living in the area, right? Because they don't have to drive around and pay for gas all the time. They can get on transit. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and would be happy to. Oh, sorry, one last question.
Go for it.
You talk a lot about public partnerships. Have you been, or has anybody on your team been in a serious conversation with PSEF about some of these energy-related conversations,
More so on projects. We should definitely talk to them more broadly. I think we're just kind of related to this. We're always tracking kind of policy and funding topics. We've been having a lot of conversations with OHCS on kind of co-locating affordable housing with childcare and just kind of understanding like policy barriers that are out there, but also where there are funding opportunities. How we can make sure that those are positioned well on our TOD projects.
Yeah, I know they have a lot of dedicated funding for things like ground source heat pumps for extra insulation to improve energy efficiency, windows, even things like ductless mini splits and systems that are a little just more energy efficient in general. So, okay, I'm done. Thank y'all so much for indulging me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Flowers. Director Kellogg?
Thank you, President Lewis. Thank you for your presentation. I've got a question about this Willow Creek development. Now, Mr. Bett, if I heard you correctly, phase 1 is to be sold, the land itself. Is that the same case with phase 2?
To be honest, it's likely, but it's not for certain. It's still, typically when we look at our sort of strategy with regards to land transactions is, does or would TriMet in the future want recourse over the, might it need to have some control in the future over the land? And, Hollywood, which is a ground lease, because it was very closely aligned with, our infrastructure, and there's a there's a right through, there's an access through the building to get to a substation. We went into a ground lease. On other previous projects, Fuller Station's a good example, we sold the land. Developers and their funders are normally much more comfortable with a land sale than a ground lease. But we're always, if it facilitates a transaction to do a ground lease because it's it's a lower entry point, then we may go down that route. So we haven't made a determined answer, but it's probably likely that we would go down a sale for phase 2 as well.
And thanks for bringing up Hollywood, because that was going to be my next question, is why are those two different? And when the Hollywood deal went through, I was very intrigued about the ground lease piece because we were going to retain control of that. Because in the short term, yes, it's better for it to be sold and it's a cleaner transaction for the buyer. But, that's a 100-year project we're talking about in Hollywood, 100-year lease. And is that housing going to make it 100 years, right? We don't know. And if it gets knocked down or if it becomes dilapidated, then we've really kind of taken a step backwards over the longer term. And so I would encourage you to think more about TriMet retaining that ownership so that when redevelopment potential happens, that we can continue to use this TOD process and do good over a very long term. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kellogg. Any other comments? Yes, Director Flowers.
I'm so sorry, y'all.
That's
One more
fine.
thing, just based off of Director Kellogg's comments, it got me thinking about ownership in particular. It might be worthwhile for the team to think really innovatively about, more democratized models of ownership on TriMet-owned parcels that we're developing, right? Things like real estate investment trusts. I see you guys are smiling. I know that you probably have some ideas, so I'll stop talking and let you talk. Yeah.
No, I'll just say, we are looking at that pretty hard on our east side planning for affordable home ownership opportunities. I think there's a lot of interest in that, particularly out in that market. So, yeah, in that community. Stay tuned.
Yeah, yeah, and beyond that as well, we've had conversations with our government affairs teams, with our counterparts at Metro. One of the big holes in housing in Oregon is condominiums in apartment building condominiums. They existed pre-2016, and then the contract defect legislation in Oregon was modified and to the worse, and developers don't really want to touch building condominium buildings, apartment-style condominium buildings. We think it's a good way for wealth generation and actually community building, because candidly, renters have less attachment to their communities than people that own there, just by nature. So we would love to find a way to try and look at that legislation to see how it might be further refined to bring that sector of the market back in play, because that aligns very well with transit-oriented development as well.
Yeah, I would just say the Federal Transit Administration gives us a lot of tools and leverage to do what is kind of site-specific and appropriate at each of our properties, which is really cool. There's kind of a ground map for, if a ground lease makes more sense for TriMet, we can engage in that. If sale of a property makes more sense, we can engage in that. There's a whole host of other things, working with community land trusts. So we are fortunate that we have a lot of good support to steer a project towards, a contextual design for the community.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? I do have an ending final comment. Earlier in your presentation, you were gave a little bit of information on your open houses when you, I forget which area that was, and I remember the one for, can you remember to invite the board? Because especially if you're in our districts, I'm excited because of the library, and I get a lot of feedback from my constituents. But to invite us to those open houses, I mean, there was one or two you mentioned, I was like, ooh, because I'm always wanting the board to be able to be present, to talk to their community, and that is important because having the feedback when they know that there is TriMet, and not to say that you have less, but it helps us as a board to understand the needs of our community if you're creating those spaces for them to come together to talk about their community. So just keep us on the mailing list via Shelley and Sam to make sure the board's aware of when you're walking in our districts, that we can be there as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you, President Lewis. We will.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I think sandwiches are 8, and last TOD, you're my favorite. How's the website doing? I know when you first put it up, it was new and exciting, and so any updates, progress on feedback from the website, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah, I think, we hope it's doing well. We built it out. It's now 2 pages. There's now a sort of landing page which gives a high-level overview of the program and projects, and then there's a library which contains all the past planning studies. It's where we post ability to go, put out the boards for the open houses. There is a sort of blog piece that basically just highlights, the latest news from the program.
Oh, okay, that's new.
So, yeah, so it's, and we're continuing to refine it. We see it as one of the best ways in order to sort of get some of these complicated, concepts across and produce, really just keep the community informed about what's going on and give them the opportunity to come back to us and say, I want to talk about X, Y, and Z, and what about this project, and suggest ideas and provide feedback.
Great, and it also keeps the board informed. Okay, thank you. On that note, we'll call it a day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. This is one of my favorite groups.